Chapter 1060. Shi Tianhao's eyes lit up when he heard that. Oh, where is it? Huang Zhenting answered with a smile. From the southern wasteland to the infinite wasteland vast land. After entering the infinite wasteland vast land, head east from the exit. About 4,000 kilometers away, there is a canyon with a very good environment. He glanced at a youth beside him. Speaking of which, it was Shi Yang who discovered it. It was a young man who looked like a tiger. Although he was only at the foundation establishment stage, he exuded a fearless spirit. His name was Shi Yang, and he was Huang Zhenting's personal disciple. Although he had only been in the sect for a short period of time, he had gradually become famous among the third-generation disciples, and was looked upon favorably by many seniors and fellow disciples. What was worth mentioning was that he was related to Shi Tianhao by blood. He was a descendant of the Shi clan that had migrated into the Xianmen realm. When he was young, he passed the test and successfully entered the Xianmen Tianzong sect. The Shi clan members that entered the Xianmen realm were all distant branches. Usually they were not treated very well, but because of this, they had made great progress in the Xianmen realm in recent years. Among them, there were many people with cultivation talent, but those with outstanding talent were very rare. Shi Yang was one of the rare exceptions. His talent was so high that he was the top existence in the entire Shi clan's younger generation. It alarmed the Shi clan, and even the great Qin dynasty had heard of him. But now, to the Shi clan, they naturally wanted their own clansmen to enter the Xianmen Tianzong sect. Even if the branch was strong and the main branch was weak, they did not care. Moreover, Xianmen Tianzong did not forbid the Shi clan members from entering the sect. There were indeed disciples from the Shi clan who entered the Xianmen Tianzong sect, but they were not as outstanding as Shi Yang. As the Battle of West Hill City gradually became history, the Shi clan that had kept a low profile for many years finally had the momentum to rise again because of their relationship with Xianmen Tianzong. However, in the territory of the Great Qin dynasty, the Shi clan still maintained enough respect for the imperial family and did not become arrogant. The Great Qin dynasty could tolerate the existence of aristocratic families, but the premise was that it had to be under control. It was impossible for the imperial family to not have any thoughts towards the profound Gate Sky sect that stood behind the Shi clan, and had risen once more within their own kingdom. However, the profound Gate Heaven sect had no intention of supporting the Shi family, nor did they have any intention of taking the initiative to expand their influence in the Qin dynasty. Adding on the fact that the Shi family that had risen up were rather clever, the Qin dynasty took a tacit attitude. Of course, if the Shi family didn't do anything out of line, the Great Qin dynasty would have to consider the reaction of the Profound Gate Sky sect if it wanted to touch the Shi family. Even if the Profound Gate Sky sect hadn't expressed any opinions from the beginning, the formless deterrent force was there, and the Great Qin dynasty had to take it seriously. Shi Yang entered the barren Sky Valley after passing the direct disciple exam. Naturally, Shi Tianhao was one of the reasons. However, Shi Yang himself didn't really care about it at the beginning. It was mainly because his family had been nagging him so much that his ears were about to grow calluses. After entering Huang Zhenting's tutelage, he did not receive any special treatment. Instead, being Huang's disciple was quite torturous. Although he was not as black-bellied as his master, this did not stop Huang from imparting his experiences to his disciples. As a result, Shi Yang and the others began to live a life of pain and happiness from the moment they entered. However, Shi Yang had a bit of his master Huang Zhenting's carefree vigor. After all these years, he had become more and more sturdy. Moreover, what made others not know whether to laugh or cry was that the Tianyang lineage had produced a little demon king. He was of the same lineage as his master and grandmaster. Like master, like disciple. After Huang Zhenting became an adult, and became more and more reliable, his disciple perfectly took over his position. There was really no break in his work. Gu Lei and Li Kueyin looked at Huang Zhenting and Shi Yang speechlessly. They had coincidentally met Huang Zhenting and Shi Yang on the way to Kunlun Mountain, but they did not know what they were doing. It was not a secret, so Huang Zhenting did not hide it from them. In the end, the two were immediately shocked. Gu Lei and Li Kueyin knew that Shi Tianhao often went to Infinite Wilderness. However, going to the demon world of Infinite Wilderness and occupying a place to set up one's own residence were two completely different things. Just like in the Divine Land, there were very few powerful demons who occupied a piece of land. Great demons like the North Sea Whale King and the Nine-Clawed Eagle King were already at their limit. However, they were independent after all. Unlike Shi Tianhao, who had already formed an essence soul, and had Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong standing behind him. Today, Xianmen Tianzong's influence was no longer limited to the human world in the Divine Land. Even the demons in Infinite Wilderness were paying attention to this behemoth that was becoming increasingly powerful. Some actions in the Divine Land would attract attention, not to mention going to the Infinite Wilderness for a horse race. Currently, there was a piece of land that the human race had firmly occupied in Infinite Wilderness Taihua Mountain, which was occupied by the Taishu Temple. A few years ago, it was attacked by the demons and almost completely destroyed. According to Huang Jinting's description, the place they had their eyes on was rather remote, and close to the entrance of the realm passage connecting the Divine Land and Infinite Wilderness. It was not like Taihua Mountain, which was located in a strategic location, and could cover a large area in many directions. However, Shi Tianhao had opened another residence in this valley. It was very likely that the demon race would think that he was occupying a bridgehead, and was preparing for the war between the two worlds. It was hard to predict how the demons would react. Gu Lei and Li Kueyin looked at Shi Yang, and then at Huang Jinting, not knowing what to say for a moment. Shi Yang had found this place, and Huang Jinting seemed to agree with him. He was really of the same bloodline as Shi Tianhao, bold to the extreme, and not afraid of causing trouble. Thinking of this, Gu Lei and Li Kueyin turned to look at Shi Tianhao. After hearing the news, Shi Tianhao frowned and said seriously, "I've passed by the place you mentioned, and there is no valley there." Indeed. Gu Lei and Li Kueyin looked at each other and smiled bitterly. I knew it would be like this. After listening to Huang Jinting and Shi Yang's report, Shi Tianhao's first reaction was not that the Infinite Wilderness was not suitable for setting up a manor, but that he had been there before, and there was no blessed land suitable for setting up a manor there. Huang Jinting smiled and said, I specially captured a few demons nearby and asked them about it. In the past few years, the terrain there has changed and gradually formed a valley. The flow of the heaven and earth spiritual energy around the valley has also changed accordingly, making it a good blessed land. After saying that, he looked at Gu Lei and Li Kueyin and continued, Now that valley is covered in thunderclouds all year round, and the lightning essence is getting denser and denser. Although it is not on a large scale yet, after observing for a long time, I am sure that with the passage of time, it will eventually become an outstanding treasure land. Because it has not yet taken shape, it has not been noticed by the stronger demons. It is currently in an ownerless state and has great potential in the future. Hearing this, Shi Tianhao nodded and said, Oh, in that case it is indeed a good place. He thought for a moment, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. The location is just right. Hearing Shi Tianhao's words, Gu Lei and Li Kueyin's hearts moved slightly. They understood that there was a hidden meaning in Shi Tianhao's words. It was not that he was simply unscrupulous. On the contrary, while being extremely bold, there were other considerations. After seriously thinking for a moment, Gu Lei looked at Shi Tianhao and said, Could it be that you want to? Shi Tianhao raised an index finger to his lips and stopped Gu Lei from continuing. He then smiled at Huang Jinting and the other younger disciples and said, Senior brother Gu, don't speak first. Let them use their brains. Gu Lei and Li Kueyin both laughed. Li Kueyin looked at Shi Tianhao and sighed. Tianhao, don't you always use your fists and mouth? Being teased by her like this, Shi Tianhao was not angry and laughed. Senior sisterly, don't laugh at me. Huang Jinting, Shi Yang, and the rest could tell that Shi Tianhao was implying something, so they started to ponder over it. Fortunately, they were already used to Shi Tianhao's unconstrained way of thinking. On a branch of the mysterious sky treasure tree, Lin Feng glanced at the desolate sky valley out of the corner of his eyes, and shook his head with a smile. Shi Tianhao, Gu Lei, and Li Kueyin became husband and wife in the desolate sea assembly. At that time, although Shi Tianhao had already reached the golden elixir period, he was still a brat in his teens. Although Gu Lei and Li Kueyin were not as strong as Shi Tianhao, They were still late golden elixir period cultivators, and the most outstanding talents of the younger generation of the Purple Cloud Path. Now the two of them had already formed their nascent souls. Based on their cultivation speed and strength, they could be considered geniuses in the entire divine land. However, Shi Tianhao had already formed his nascent soul. In terms of strength, even the Purple Cloud Path sect master, Dao Master Lei Yun, was no match for him. In terms of strength and status, the gap between the two of them was indeed quite large. As the saying went, dragons did not befriend snakes. It was difficult for people of completely different levels to become true friends. Even if they did become friends, as the distance between them continued to grow, the friendship would eventually fade away. Sometimes, it was not that the strong disliked the weak. On the contrary, it was precisely because they were strong that they did not care about what others thought of them. On the contrary, the weak would become more and more embarrassed and uncomfortable under the criticism of others until it hurt their self-esteem. For people like Shi Tianhao, even if they had companions, those companions would often serve as a foil to them. In the end, those companions would not be able to keep up with them and would gradually disappear from their world. Those who could barely keep up would only become followers or background characters. As the saying went, companions are all trash at fighting, and when they fight, they stand aside and show off. However, at this moment the conversation between Shi Tianhao, Gu Lei, and Li Kueyin was no different from the past. Shi Tianhao was willing to befriend them only because they were worth befriending, not because of how high their cultivation levels were, or how strong they were. Making friends was because they were like-minded, not because of the strength of a fighter. Even if there was a day when they would gradually drift apart in the future, it should not affect today's happy journey. Even today, Lin Feng's cultivation level and status were far above Kong Nanhua and Miao Shihao's, but there was no difference between the two of them in their daily conversation. To be able to maintain a calm state of mind in front of Lin Feng and Shi Tianhao, neither humble nor arrogant, neither embarrassed nor jealous, it was not something that could be done just by being thick-skinned. One's state of mind had its merits. Even if he could not make a name for himself in the future, he would definitely achieve something. Chapter 1061. In the barren Sky Valley, Li Kueyin looked at Shi Tianhao and smiled. By the way, Tianhao, you are already an adult. Your cultivation is successful, and your foundation is stable. Do you have a cultivation partner that you like? Hearing this, Shi Tianhao chuckled. No, there is no need. Gu Lei smiled and looked him up and down. Do you really not care, or have you not been enlightened yet? Are you already past the age limit? A long time ago, Grandpa once mentioned that he wanted me to have a child as soon as possible. However, if I marry a wife just for this, I feel that it is not good for the woman, so I have been dragging it on. Shi Tianhao said casually. Until now, I do not have any special thoughts. I have already decided to leave it at that. His tone was relaxed, but there was no joy in his eyes. On the contrary, there was some worry. Hearing this, Gu Lei and Li Kueyin were silent. As close friends with Shi Tianhao, they naturally knew that Shi Tianhao's parents were still missing. After his grandfather, Shi Zhongtian, entered the void battlefield again, his whereabouts were also unknown. Even the Shi family's original leader, Shi Wu, had entered the void battlefield to look for him, but there was not much news from him. The uniqueness of the void battlefield meant that it was very difficult to find people. It was especially difficult to find them. Shi Tianhao had spent most of his time in the void battlefield. A while ago, he stayed there for a long time, and only returned to Yujing Mountain before Lin Feng went to the Sea of Stars. Coincidentally, he met up with Lin Feng and entered the barren ancient star ocean together. If there were no accidents, Shi Tianhao would stay at Yujing Mountain for a while to deal with the backlog of matters. Then he would enter the void battlefield again to find his family. He had walked this slow and long path for a long time, and would continue until there was a definite result. At this time, the void split open and a figure walked out of the space crack. He was dressed in a purple robe with a white robe over it. He was dressed like a scholar. It was Zhui. After appearing, Zhui cupped his hands at Gu Lei and Li Kueyin. I had something to do, and was delayed after receiving the news. Sorry for making you wait. Other than being Shi Tianhao's close friends, Gu Lei and Li Kueyin also had a good relationship with Zhu Yi. In particular, Gu Lei was more familiar with Zhu Yi while Li Kueyin was more familiar with Shi Tianhao. After greeting Zhu Yi, Gu Lei intentionally changed the topic and said with a smile, "Speaking of which, Tianhao has been chased to the front by his juniors." As he spoke, he opened his palm and took out a piece of refined jade that flickered with purple light. "This is something my disciple entrusted me to give to fellow Taoist Zhu's disciple. It has the effect of sound transmission, and can be used multiple times." Seeing this, Shi Tianhao laughed. "Oh, it's for Tai." He looked at Gu Lei and Li Kueyin. "Xiaolon is very magnanimous. Even for such a thing, don't look at her like a little girl. She is in a trial that will last for a long time and can't leave Purple Sky Peak, so she asked us to bring it here." Gu Lei smiled bitterly. "What is there to be magnanimous about? She is just a tomboy. Only Tai would like her." Gu Lei smiled bitterly. "What is there to be magnanimous about? She is just a tomboy. Only Tai would like her." Zhu Yi also smiled and took the refined jade from Gu Lei's hand. Xiaolon is indeed not inferior to men. With a thought, Yang Tai's figure came to desolate Heaven Valley and bowed to Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao. Disciple greets master and seventh martial uncle. After bowing to the seniors, Yang Tai turned to Gu Lei and Li Kueyin and bowed again. "Martial Uncle Gu, Martial Uncle Li." Gu Lei looked at Yang Tai and said with a smile, "Your cultivation has improved again. Even if we husband and wife work together, we might not be your match." His tone was calm and honest without any embarrassment. Yang Tai bowed and replied without arrogance or pretentiousness, "Martial Uncle overpraises me. Junior still needs more training." Zhu Yi smiled and handed the refined jade to Yang Tai. Yang Tai was slightly startled, but Li Kueyin smiled and said, "My tomboy wants to bring this to you." Hearing this, Yang Tai's calm and steady expression slightly changed into a bit of embarrassment. After accepting the refined jades, he paused for a bit before asking, "Is senior sister Xiaolon still doing well?" Zhu Yi pointed at the refined jade in his disciple's hand. "If you have any questions, ask them yourself. Go." He waved his hand at Yang Tai. Yang Tai looked at the refined jade in his hand and immediately understood. He smiled. "There is no need to rush. You, Martial Uncle Gu and Martial Uncle Li have not seen each other for a long time. When you are talking, this disciple will stand to the side. If you have any instructions, this disciple will immediately go and do it." Shi Tianhao smiled and said, "Little Yellow and the others are enough here. You can go and do your own things." Seeing Zhu Yi nod his head, Yang Tai bowed and said, "Yes, this disciple will take his leave." Seeing Yang Tai's departing figure, Gu Lei and Li Kueyin looked at each other and smiled. "He is very calm." Yang Tai was not in a hurry and did not care. He was in a hurry and did not show it in front of Gu Lei and Li Kueyin. However, when he was about to leave the desolate Sky Valley, his steps were clearly much bigger. But he could still control himself and put his personal affairs first. "I have embarrassed myself in front of the two of you," Zhu Yi said with a smile. Gu Lei and Li Kueyin shook their heads. No. Although he is still young, he has already become a great person." Gu Lei said, "We're here because we've discovered a thunder-rumbling jade mine in the Fangyu realm. I'm sure your sect needs it." "Oh." Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao looked at each other and nodded slightly. The Fangyu realm was a medium-class world. Just like the ancient Origin Heaven realm, it was divided and occupied by a few forces. Originally, the Reincarnation sect had a share of this place. After the exterminating Xian War, the Reincarnation sect gave compensation and apologized. In fact, one of the compensation they gave to Xianmen Tianzong was the territory they occupied in the Fangyu realm. Later, Lin Feng thanked Purple Cloud Dao for lending a hand to Xianmen Tianzong during the exterminating Xian War. Therefore, he directly transferred the territories in the two medium-class worlds that the Reincarnation sect had ceded to Purple Cloud Dao, including the territory in the Fangyu realm. Gu Lei was referring to a new mineral vein that had been discovered in this territory. On the other hand, the Thunder Cry Jade was a rare mineral that was extremely rare. It was extremely beneficial to cultivators who practiced the thunder arts, or those who used the thunder essence qi to refine their bodies. Gu Lei and Li Kuiyin naturally did not come together just to give something to their disciple. They also had to discuss the Thunder Jade Vein with Xianmen Tianzong. Although Xianmen Tianzong had completely transferred the territory in the Fangyu realm to Purple Cloud Dao, from Xianmen Tianzong's point of view, the Fangyu realm had nothing to do with them. How the Purple Cloud Dao wanted to deal with the resources produced in the Fangyu realm was entirely up to them. But in the past few years, the resources produced in the Fangyu realm had been supplied to Xianmen Tianzong in large quantities, in addition to their own use. This time, it was not surprising that Purple Cloud Dao informed Xianmen Tianzong that a new Thunder Jade Vein had been discovered in the Fangyu realm. Of course, this was also an act of goodwill. After the karma discussion, it was normal for Purple Cloud Dao to do so. They might not have made up their mind to come to Kunlun Mountain to ask for advice, but they would definitely further strengthen their good relationship and lay a more solid foundation. Lin Feng was well aware of this, but he did not care. This was a normal exchange of favors. In the following days, the situation in Kunlun Mountain and the Divine Land gradually returned to peace. The only thing worth mentioning was that Shi Tianhao brought Huang Jinting and a group of Barren Sky Valley disciples to Infinite Wasteland and occupied the valley that Huang Jinting and Shi Yang had found. They carried out a large-scale construction and opened it up as Shi Tianhao's personal residence. To many people's surprise, although the local demon clans were wantonly resisting, the truly powerful demon clans chose to turn a blind eye to this. This was a stark contrast to the Taishu Temple's occupation of Taihua Mountain. There was a lot of discussion in the Divine Land. Some people thought that compared to the Taishu Temple's occupation of Taihua Mountain, the valley that Shi Tianhao occupied was geographically remote and did not seem to have any special value at the moment. Therefore, the great demons did not want to clash with Xianmen Tianzong for no reason. Some people also thought that compared to the Taishu Temple, the great demons were more afraid of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong. Some people also thought that the great demons were more afraid of the Taishu Temple, so they paid more attention to it and did not care about Shi Tianhao's behavior. In short, all kinds of speculations were rampant. Due to the special geographical environment, Shi Tianhao had to temporarily take charge of his new residence and put aside the matter of going to the void battlefield to find his relatives. However, it would not take too long. With the Tsangtian Dao Jian accompanying him, he could set off again after the initial period of establishing the new residence. On Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng continued to travel between the Divine Land and the Barren Sky Sea. He cultivated his Dao and tried to figure out his own Dao art, as well as his incomplete new divine powers. Ding of Shenzhou ostracized Xiao Yan, so Lin Feng had to concoct pills himself most of the time. Although it took up a lot of time, it helped Lin Feng's level of concoction improve a lot. Through Ding of Shenzhou, a large number of resources were transformed into a large number of pills. Not only did they provide for the cultivation of Xianmen Tianzong's own disciples, but they were also provided to the sects that were friendly with Xianmen Tianzong, such as the Purple Cloud Dao. They became another powerful weapon for Xianmen Tianzong to unite the various human cultivation forces in the Divine Land. On one hand, Xiao Yan and the others concentrated on their own cultivation, and on the other hand, they taught and guided their disciples. Once again, Xianmen Tianzong entered a period of rapid development. As time passed, after Tang Jun, Zhou Yunsong, Han Yang, Ing Luozha, Huang Jinting, and Yang Tai successively formed the Yuanying period. Tan Yinqing, Zhuge Wanqiu, Zhao Huan, Sun Shuer, Kujing, and Yan Wuwei all reached the late stage of the Golden Elixir period, and were close to forming their nascent souls. The second generation of successor disciples and the third generation of successor disciples were growing rapidly. The nascent soul stage and the Horus core stage of the celestial sect 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 showed signs of a blowout once again. Chapter 1062. The top batch of second-generation disciples have basically all succeeded in forming their nascent souls, or are close to doing so. Lin Feng smiled. But if the rest want to catch up, they'll have to wait. After all, the higher the cultivation level, the more difficult it is to make progress, and the more time it takes. When it's broken down to each individual, the difference will easily become bigger. He turned to look at Xiao Yan. On the other hand, the third-generation disciples are gradually growing up. This is a good thing. There are new talents in every generation. Xiaoyan smiled and said, just as Master said, this is a gratifying performance. Lin Feng asked, is Tianyu going to try to pass the Void Lightning Tribulation soon? Xiaoyan nodded. In terms of accumulation, he's still a bit lacking. But his personality is very inclined to do as he pleases and be free. Right now, he's already satisfied with his state of mind. If he suppresses it and settles it down, it'll be a bit disadvantageous. In the future, even if he accumulates enough, I'm afraid there will be flaws in his state of mind. At this point, Xiaoyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Everyone has their own opportunities and paths, so I still plan to let him decide for himself. I've watched him grow up, so I understand him quite well. Although he's quite casual, he won't take this kind of thing lightly. Lin Feng nodded. Teaching in accordance with his aptitude should be like this. You just need to grasp it. Hearing that, Xiaoyan's face revealed a smile. Disciple has always trusted Lu Xiaofeng's temperament and willpower. Especially after experiencing the matter of Tang Jun catching up from behind. It is indeed very rare for him to still be able to maintain a calm and unwavering state of mind. Lin Feng also smiled. Tian Song's situation is special. He can't be compared to the others. Tang Jun possessed the Azure Flame Emperor's body. Apart from the lethality of the flames itself, the azure flame it produced could also interfere with the flow of time. This interference didn't only affect the opponent, but also Tang Jun himself. As Tang Jun's cultivation increased, he became more and more comfortable with his azure flame. This kind of innate ability could not only be used to fight with others, but it could also be used in daily cultivation. Activating the azure flame consumed a lot of Tang Jun's magic power and spiritual power, so it couldn't be used for a long time. But in the process of constantly activating it, Tang Jun was actually constantly honing his control over this power. He broke through his limits again and again, ushering in greater progress. The reason why Tang Jun was able to catch up and improve his cultivation faster than Zhou Yunsong, Han Yang, and the others was because of his special physique. Of course, apart from having the Azure Flame Emperor body, Azure Flame Emperor's body was also very good. He had 9 points of innate bone potential, 9 points of comprehension, 8 points of will, and 6 points of fortune. The total value of the 4 innate potential was 32 points. What was even more eye-catching was that excluding fortune, the total value of the first 3 innate potential was 26 points, which was the highest among all the second-generation direct disciples. Under the protection of Lin Feng, Xiaoyan and his disciple, as well as Xianmen Tianzong, the fortune source 6 points were obviously enough. If the total value of one's innate potential was high enough, it meant that one's potential was huge. Of course, whether one's potential could be truly transformed was not certain. There were also people with high total value of their innate potential, but in the end, they did not grow to the level they expected. However, with Tang Jun's current momentum, he could already predict the future. It was bound to be limitless. Speaking of which, Lin Feng had only seen a few people with such high potential qualities in innate talent, comprehension, and will. At the very least, he hadn't seen many people who could accurately see the values. Excluding the 4 chosen ones under his tutelage, Lin Feng often suspected that the values of these 4 people were not the same as the others, or that the reference values were really only for reference purposes. Of course, although it was very difficult to change, the values of these 4 innate potential were not completely unchanged. Until today, the values of Xiaoyan and the others had already changed. Even Yang Qing and Yu Hongyan, after the battle with Zhang Lai, their potential values had also changed. Lin Feng looked at Xiaoyan. The growth of the younger generation disciples is gratifying. The few of you have also improved, which makes me even more gratified. Xiaoyan said. The situation of the vast thousand worlds is changing rapidly. Although it is calm now, it is actually like a taut bowstring. The arrow is on the string, and it will be fired at any moment. As for when it will happen, we and the others can't see it. We can only focus on our daily practice. After all, forging iron requires one's own strength. He smiled slightly. After all, while we are working hard, the others are not idle. In the few years after the Xian annihilation battle, the overall situation in the Divine Land was determined to be the two extremes of Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple. Under the overall situation, there were small changes, especially with the news that the current leader of the Dragon Clan, Yuanlong King, had successfully passed through the intermediate tribulation. The entire Tianyuan Great World was filled with the momentum of a storm. Relatively speaking, the changes in the human cultivation world in the Divine Land were worth paying attention to, and the first to bear the brunt was the Heavenly Sword sect. After the Heavenly Sword sect's sect leader Heavenly Sword Venerable, who had returned to the Void and Tao on the spot during the Battle of Shu Mountain, another Void Return expert of the Heavenly Sword sect, Supreme Elder Sword Immortal, had finally come out after many years of seclusion and successfully reached the Tao integration realm. Elder Sword Immortal was an elder of the Heavenly Sword sect, born in the Middle Era. He had already cultivated for more than 10,000 years, and his seniority was extremely high. Even the Heavenly Sword Venerable had to call him Martial Granduncle. After the Battle of Shu Mountain, after Lin Feng had sent Xian Tian into destruction with heaven punishing, Elder Sword Immortal had gone into seclusion. When he came out recently, he had finally reached the Void Return and Tao integration realm. In the past few years, the Heavenly Sword sect had produced 2 Tao integration realm experts, and the entire Divine Land was shocked. However, due to various reasons, the Heavenly Sword sect had kept a low profile. They had simply invited people who were close to them to celebrate, and they had not made a big deal out of it. It was worth mentioning that Elder Sword Immortal had also invited people from Xianmen Tianzong to attend the ceremony. Although Lin Feng did not congratulate him, Xiao Yan, as his eldest disciple, personally went to the Heavenly Mountain and received a great welcome. When Heavenly Sword Venerable and Elder Sword Immortal met Xiao Yan in private, they once again asked him to convey their gratitude to Lin Feng. In the past, the Heavenly Sword sect and Xianmen Tianzong had a good relationship. However, after the Battle of Shieling City, their relationship became awkward. It was not to say that they had broken off relations or become enemies, but it was definitely at the freezing point. This time, when Xiao Yan went to the Heavenly Mountain to congratulate him, Elder Sword Immortal had left the mountain to greet him. It could be seen as a journey to break the ice between the two sides. This was partly due to the fact that Lin Feng had sent Xian Tian into destruction. The Karma discourse a few years ago might have also affected things. Taishu Temple was also invited to attend the ceremony. The current Empyrean Walker, Lin Daohan, came to congratulate him and met Xiao Yan. Both sides were very calm, as if the conflict in the desolate ancient Sea of Stars a few years ago had never happened. The Heavenly Sword sect, which had always been supported by Taishu Temple, had broken the ice between Xianmen Tianzong and the Heavenly Sword sect. Taishu Temple did not express any objections. However, no matter if it's the Celestial Sword Lord or the Old Sword Immortal, they naturally also expressed even greater respect towards the Void Temple. This was similarly within the expectations of Lin Feng and Xiao Yan. The far-reaching effects of Xian Tian's destruction began to ferment as time passed. Other than Heavenly Sword Venerable and Elder Sword Immortal, the sect leader of the Vast Sea Sword sect, Sword Venerable of the Vast Sea, had also been in seclusion for the past few years. He was also a great sword cultivator, who had refined his spirit to return to the void for a long time. Through the information obtained by Xianmen Tianzong, the Thunderous Sword Venerable also expressed that he was gradually breaking through the bottleneck, and would soon be in seclusion to break through to the unification realm. The sect leader of the Constellation Sword sect, the Constellation Sword Venerable, had successfully refined his spirit to return to the void after 3,000 years in the vast thousand worlds. The Sun and Moon Sword sect had a Yuanying stage ancestor, who cultivated in the Moonlight Sword Tao, who had successfully proven his primordial spirit. The Sun Luminary Sword Venerable had finally arrived. Shushan had remained silent, and did not respond to the many changes. They were still sealed off from the outside world, and there was no news from within, as if they were isolated from the world. The changes in the various Sword Tao sects were overwhelming, and they became the main content of the changes in the overall stability of the Divine Land. Other than the Heavenly Sword sect, the Vast Sea Sword sect, and other forces, another eye-catching change appeared in the north. During the Battle of West Hill City, They annexed the territory of the Heavenly Lake sect, unified the northern border, and integrated the various resources of the northern border. After their overall strength had greatly increased, the northern militant imperial court had also helped Xianmen Tianzong in the battle of exterminating the Xian. After that, Lin Feng rewarded them by giving the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron from the Eastern Heaven Gate to the northern militant imperial court. Although the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron from the Eastern Heaven Gate was only a spirit-nurturing grade magic treasure, and could not compare to the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron, one of the 9 treasures of the Heavenly Gate in the ancient times, it was already a treasure for the Northern Militant Imperial Court. With a large amount of resources, the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron was converted for the use of the Northern Militant cultivators. In addition to the exchange of resources with Xianmen Tianzong, the Northern Militant Imperial Court had embarked on a period of rapid development that had not been seen for many years. Its rapid development had even attracted the attention of the Great Qin Dynasty and the Great Zhou Dynasty. However, the upper echelons of the Northern Militant Imperial Court were very clear-headed. They adopted a more conservative attitude towards the Great Qin Dynasty and formed an alliance with the Great Qin Dynasty. When facing the Great Zhou Dynasty, they did not do anything too out of line or provoke the bottom line of the Great Zhou Dynasty. After the battle of exterminating the Xian, the Great Zhou Dynasty's own strategic posture had completely turned into a defensive one. As for the rise of the Northern Militant Imperial Court, they could only remain silent on the surface. Of course, private confrontations were everywhere. The Great Qin Dynasty and the Northern Militant Imperial Court were the same. And recently, not long before the Old Sword Immortals Dao Fusion, the strongest martial artist of the northern border, the Northern Militant Imperial Court's Great Chanyu, who had cultivated his spirit for thousands of years, finally succeeded in Dao Fusion, causing the strength of the Northern Militant Imperial Court to steadily increase. Apart from the fact that there were no treasures of fortune to suppress their fate, the Northern Militant Imperial Court and the Heavenly Sword sect had become powerful forces in the Divine Land that could not be ignored. Apart from Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple, even the Great Qin Dynasty and the Great Zhou Dynasty had begun to pay attention to them. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and silently said, "The information we have at hand is still too little, especially the information about Taishu Temple. So, it remains to be seen how the balance of the situation will be broken. It's a good thing that you all are diligently cultivating. It's never wrong to improve your own strength. Master has a premonition that when Protector Miao comes out this time, he will bring us a lot of useful things." The reason why he went into seclusion was not because of a problem with his cultivation. Lin Feng looked up at the void, slowly said, "Recently, the changes in space have gradually become more frequent. It's not far from the day he comes out." Chapter 1063. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and said with a smile, "Miss Shen, or has finally completed the trial?" Xiao Yan heard this and immediately chuckled. "Yes, just as disciple returned from the sky-piercing mountain." He looked at Lin Feng with a sneaky look. Lin Feng scolded him with a smile. "Brat, what's with that look?" Xiao Yan happily scooted over, his face filled with a fawning smile. "Master," Lin Feng said with a smile. All right, since when did I go back on my promise to you? Back then, I said I would personally come to propose marriage for you, so I will definitely go." "Thank you, Master." Xiao Yan cheered. At this moment, he seemed to have returned to the half-grown youth in Wuzhou City. Lin Feng said to him, "Choose a few capable people from your sect to accompany them. Not only is it a show, but it can also be considered a form of training for them." Xiao Yan's expression became more solemn. He cupped his hands and said, "Don't worry, Master, disciple understands." During the battle of exterminating Xian, the crack of the Nether Sea suddenly appeared in the ancient world of immortals. Whether it was Taishu Temple, the people in the ancient world of immortals, or Lin Feng and his disciple, they all determined that it was related to the king of the underworld. Although there had been no movement after that, and the king of the underworld had always hidden himself, Lin Feng and the others had never let down their guard. Lin Feng scanned with his divine sense. "Yes, little Lin, Hong Yan and Xiao Wu are all in seclusion, so I won't disturb them. There are some movements at Tianhao's new villa, so he can't be separated. With a flick of his finger, 2 streams of light flew up and landed in Qiantian Palace and Hello House respectively. In the next moment, Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang came to them at the same time. They first bowed to Lin Feng, then to Xiao Yan. Master, eldest senior brother. Lin Feng said with a smile. Master is going to the ancient world of immortals to propose marriage for your eldest senior brother. If you have nothing to do, let's go together. Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang looked at each other and nodded. We have nothing to do, master. After answering Lin Feng, the two looked at Xiao Yan and Zhu Yi smiled. Congratulations, eldest senior brother, you are finally going to marry Zhen. The serious expression on Li Yuanfang's face faded a lot, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He solemnly cupped his fists at Xiao Yan and said, Congratulations, eldest senior brother. Xiao Yan said with a smile, Thank you for accompanying me, this hairy son-in-law, to the ancient world of immortals. Li Yuanfang said, Master is going to the ancient world of immortals to propose marriage, so other than me and second senior brother, the disciples of the younger generation will also have to come along. Even if Lin Feng goes alone, it's impossible for anyone to look down on him. The reason why he has to bring people to put on a front is not for the face of the Xian Gate Sky sect. On the contrary, it's to express formality, to show enough respect to the bride's family. Xiao Yan said, Other than a few who will stay behind to look after the clan, the rest of my direct disciples will have to come with me. You guys can choose as you please. Li Yuanfang said, Eldest senior brother, Tiansong will definitely come with you this time. He is the head of all your disciples, so when he goes to the ancient world of immortals, he will be responsible for the reception of cultivators below the primordial spirit realm. Little Tong, will naturally go as well. She must miss Zhen a lot. Xiao Yan nodded. Tianyu will be in seclusion to try to challenge the Void Thunder Tribulation, so he won't be coming with me this time. But Tianfeng can go with him to gain experience and help Tiansong. Tianfeng was one of Xiao Yan's earliest direct disciples, the little fatty Yan Wuwei. After successfully forming his gold core, Xiao Yan gave Yan Wuwei the Taoist name of Tianfeng. The word Feng made the little fatty sad for a long time. However, as he grew older and experienced, the little fatty who liked to run his mouth and did things undependably had now matured a lot. However, he was still carefree and fat. Xiao Yan didn't know if it was a misconception, but he felt that he was even fatter than when he was young. And the current Yan Wuwei, after being tempered, can already hold his own and live up to Xiao Yan's expectations. And because of his personality and tongue, he has quite a bit of talent in dealing with people and socializing with people. As the second-generation direct disciples, and even the third-generation direct disciples gradually grew up, many internal affairs and errands in Xianmen Tianzong were gradually handed over to them. Yan Wuwei was usually in charge of Fun Tianya's external affairs. Other than Fun Tianya, if cultivators from other sects came to visit, Yan Wuwei was also the main person in charge of receiving them. If there was official business that required him to go out, the fatty was also a capable person. Currently, he could be said to be doing very well in the internal affairs of Xianmen Tianzong. These experiences, on one hand, trained his ability, and on the other hand, sharpened his will. In the beginning, although Yan Wuwei didn't keep his mouth shut and liked to talk big, deep down in his heart, he had always felt inferior when facing Su Yunsheng, Ying Luoza, Li Xingfei, and the others. Although he was the first batch of direct disciples, luck played a big part in passing the assessment. Secondly, there were constantly more talented disciples entering the sect, and the latecomers caught up, which made the fatty feel very pressured. However, Xiao Yan didn't look down on him. Instead, he taught him seriously and constantly gave the fatty an appropriate amount of burden, training his ability and temperament. As a result, Yan Wuwei's mentality had gradually become calm and stable. He wouldn't feel inferior or jealous because of the appearance of more outstanding disciples, and he wouldn't become complacent and lose himself just because he was doing well in the sect. Li Yuanfang asked, Tianyu is in seclusion. Tiansong, Tianfeng, and Little Tong are all going with you, eldest senior brother. What about the other disciples, especially the third-generation direct disciples, who are going to do their homework? Xiaoyan smiled and turned to look at Zhu Yi. Second junior brother is going with us to the ancient longevity world. Hao Yang's clone will naturally stay behind, right? Zhu Yi nodded and said, Tiantai will follow us to the ancient longevity world. Although Tianbi isn't suitable to teach other disciples, I will leave Tianlin behind. I will also leave Hao Yang's clone on the mountain. When the time comes, I will temporarily take care of the Fun Tianya disciples' homework. Tiantai was Yang Tai's Taoist name, Tianbi was Ying Luoza's Taoist name, and Tianlin was Sun Shuer's Taoist name. They were all given by Zhu Yi, and they all came from Zhu Yi's own interpretation of the Tao of changes. They represented Zhu Yi's expectations for his disciples. Sun Shuer's Taoist name, Tianlin, came from the Lin hexagram. Above the earth, below the Dui hexagram. It implied that if the situation was favorable, one should firmly grasp good opportunities, make decisions decisively, and act proactively. This was relative to Sun Shuer's weak and indecisive nature. Therefore, Zhu Yi gave her this Taoist name, hoping that she would continuously sharpen herself and go further and higher in the future. Li Yuanfang nodded. That's good. If that's the case, Tianfang will also follow me to the ancient longevity world. I will choose the second and third generation direct disciples, a total of 16 people to go with me. Zhu Yi said. I will also choose 16 people. Eldest senior brother, you can choose 32 people. It's just the number of the hexagram. There's no need for too many. After all, it's just a marriage proposal, not a marriage. Xiaoyan pointed at him and smiled. Is there a need to be in such a hurry? Zhu Yi smiled and shook his head. Bring Yin Song along too. After the disciples finished their discussion, Lin Feng said with a smile, Xiaoqing has news. He has the intention to go to the ancient longevity world to pick some spirit herbs. The eyes of Xiaoyan and the other two lit up. Oh, what a coincidence. Ever since the end of the Xian annihilation battle, Yangqing followed Lin Feng and returned to the Divine Land. Then he began to treat the world by himself. During this period he saved the lives of countless people. The target of his treatment was not the cultivation world. At least, not only the cultivation world, but the entire human world. Over the years, the number of mortals who were cured by his hands was uncountable. Among the common people, Yangqing's reputation had already spread far and wide. He had the reputation of a medical saint and a medical immortal. If one were to ask the people in the secular world, the most famous person in Xianmen Tianzong, other than Lin Feng, would be Yangqing. And this was under the situation where Yangqing did not leave his name most of the time. He still had such a reputation. Seeing that Yangqing did not have any intention to buy people's hearts or make a name for himself, the Great Zhou, the Great Qin, the Northern Militant, and even the other forces in the Divine Land, for the sake of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong, tried to make things convenient for him. Over the years, Yangqing had traveled all over the world. On the contrary, he had only returned to Yujing Mountain a few times. Every time he would not stay for long and would leave again. Other than asking Lin Feng for advice on Tao, he would also give pointers to Zhou Yinsong. Then he would go to his sex medicine valley to collect medicinal herbs, or go to the pill room to return to the heavenly gold pavilion to refine pills. In the process of Yangqing traveling the world, he would often collect medicinal herbs himself. Sometimes, for some rare spiritual herbs, he would often enter some dangerous places, and he would often go to some medium-sized worlds to find medicinal herbs. But this time it was a coincidence. He was also preparing to head to the ancient longevity world at this time, and try to find a few medicinal herbs that had already gone extinct in the divine land of the vast thousand worlds. Hearing that Lin Feng was going to bring Xiaoyan and the others to propose marriage, Yangqing felt happy for his eldest senior brother. Naturally, he was prepared to meet up with Lin Feng and the others and head to the ancient longevity world together. In the void beside Lin Feng, the war god clone stepped out and stood next to him. Lin Feng said, Master's main body and Brontosaurus's clone have reached the final stage of cultivation. If there are no major changes in the situation, we will stay on Yujing Mountain. Therefore, this time, the war god clone will go to the ancient longevity world on our behalf. Xiaoyan quickly said, Master, I am already very sorry for causing you to be distracted by my personal matters. Although his grandfather, old clan leader Xiao, was still alive, in terms of personal cultivation, the difference between him and Xiaozhen, Er's parents, was too great. In the future, when they got married, it was fine to be the elder of the same clan. But this time, it was inevitable that it would be a little awkward if he went to propose marriage. As Xiao Yan's grandfather, even if he was an ordinary person, no one would look down on him. But in terms of weight, he naturally could not compare to Lin Feng going to propose marriage. Even if Lin Feng was only going to send a clone, Xiao Yan naturally cannot personally contact them for this kind of matter. Little e, contact the people in the ancient longevity world and tell them why we are here. After setting a date, we will immediately set off. Lin Feng said to Zhui. Zhui nodded and immediately went to contact them. Chapter 1064. Zhui contacted the bloodline of the ancient emperor of the ancient world of immortals, and revealed his intention to visit the ancient world of immortals in person. Lin Feng would only be proposing marriage if he visited in person. Now it was just to let the bloodline of the ancient emperor be mentally prepared and not have any other ideas. Any specific matters would be discussed after they met. After a brief silence, the people of the ancient world of immortals readily expressed their welcome. After all, the bloodline of the ancient emperor had already anticipated the matter between Xiao Yan and Xiaozhen. Although the union of Xiao Yan and Xiaozhen, no matter how their own people looked at it, in the eyes of outsiders, it would be seen as a marriage between the Xiangate Sky sect and the ancient realm. But there is still a difference between proposing marriage and a true marriage. At most it can only be counted as a kind of inclination, and not a practical choice. Moreover, with Lin Feng visiting in person, regardless of whether the marriage proposal was successful or not, the ancient world of immortals had no reason to refuse. Although they did not decide to choose Xianmen Tianzong, they also did not choose Taishu Temple. After receiving the response from the ancient world of immortals, Lin Feng and his disciple settled the matters on Jade Capital Mountain, and prepared to leave. Before leaving, Xiao Yan smacked his lips. It's a pity that the old black dragon Jiayu is in seclusion. Otherwise, I could negotiate with him and bribe him to help put up a front. When he said that, Li Yuanfeng didn't know what to do, but Zhui let out a rare chuckle. He naturally knew what Xiao Yan meant. After the Desolate Sea assembly ended, Xiao Yan returned from the ancient world of immortals for the first time, and was teased by his master, Lin Feng. At that time, Lin Feng teased his eldest disciple that if he wanted to win over his father-in-law and mother-in-law, he would need a house, a car, and money. In other words, a cave abode, a mount, treasures, and cultivation resources. Just like Shi Tianhao, Xiao Yan had long been looking for a good place to build his own mansion. However, because he was too picky, he had yet to find a suitable one. But even if there is only the Burning Heaven Cliff on Jade Jing Mountain, it is already enough. The Burning Heaven Cliff that relies on Jade Jing Mountain to exist, through Xiao Yan's many years of construction and management, it is already an extremely wondrous blessed land. As for the treasures and cultivation resources he carried with him, apart from his fellow disciples, there were almost no one in the same realm who could compare to Xiao Yan. Even those who had higher cultivation than him were not as wealthy as he was. The only problem now was the mount. Of course, with Xiao Yan's current cultivation, strength, and status, not having a mount did not affect him in the slightest. His sigh was actually just a joke. Lin Feng's God of War avatar looked back at Xiao Yan with a faint smile on his face. Brat, you don't usually offer incense, but now you're trying to make a last-minute effort? Xiao Yan chuckled. I wouldn't dare. I was just saying. Lin Feng said leisurely. What a good mount. I really do have one. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and Li Yuanfeng were slightly stunned. They looked at each other, somewhat confused. There were many great demons in Xianmen Tianzong. For Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the others, they would not really treat them as mounts. Instead, they treated them as equals. This also made the great demons feel a stronger sense of belonging to Xianmen Tianzong. However, it was different for Lin Feng. It was even an honor for the great demons in Xianmen Tianzong to become his mount. It's just that ever since Lin Feng returned from the Infinite Wasteland last time, and used Yuao Dragon King's true blood to baptize Jieyu and the White Light couple. The two demon dragons started to cultivate in seclusion, and have not come out until now. Apart from Jieyu and Bai Guang, the remaining great demons, including Wu Tong, the former North Sea Whale King, and the current Black Whale Great Sage, were actually not very suitable as mounts. It was fine in the sea, but it was a bit strange on land. Kuei Ox King was also in seclusion, preparing to break through to the late-stage Demon King realm. Fei Lian King and the Flying Snowfeather King were also suitable, but their cultivation levels were slightly lower. Master, are you talking about the Nine-Clawed Eagle King? Zhu Yi asked. Looking at Xianmen Tianzong, only the Nine-Clawed Golden Eagle was suitable. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. With a light flick of his finger, a white stream of light landed in front of the trio. After taking a closer look, Xiao Yan and the other two's eyes lit up. A pure-blooded white tiger? The creature that appeared in front of them was a fierce white tiger. Its two eyes flashed with a cold and demonic light, and its whole body flickered with a faint light. It was as cold as a metallic luster, but also like the stars in the sky, mysterious and unfathomable. It was a pure-blooded white tiger. Xiao Yan sized up the white tiger. Demon King Realm. Master, is this the son of the white tiger great sage that you captured? He found a mate and gave birth to a pure-blooded descendant? Lin Feng nodded with a smile. That's right. That guy took a Swanni as his wife and gave birth to this little guy. Speaking of which, the White Tiger clan is really talented. Because this little guy is a pure-blooded descendant of the White Tiger Great Sage, he was born a nascent demon king. It's not as difficult for him to improve his cultivation as it is for Tunton and the others. Although he was still a demon king and didn't have an indestructible demon soul, as a pure-blooded white tiger, his level was higher than Jieyu and White Light. The primordial Heavenly Dragon clan used the method of bloodline differentiation to ensure that their bloodline could be passed on very well. But the different dragon clans below the Dharma-ending realm were inferior to the pure-blooded white tiger. Xiao Yan moved closer to the White Tiger King and said with a smile, "Kid, you'll follow me from now on." Unexpectedly, the White Tiger King rolled his eyes. "You're the kid." The voice that came out of the mouth was that of a young girl. Xiao Yan was slightly stunned. "Female?" At the side, Lin Feng coughed. "Yes, her name is Yuanqing White Tiger. You can call her Yuanqing. She is indeed a female tiger." The White Tiger clan's bloodline was tyrannical. No matter which parent was a pure-blooded white tiger, the first child born would be a pure-blooded white tiger. Of course, there had never been a pure-blooded white tiger mating with a pure-blooded black tortoise or a pure-blooded vermilion bird. Therefore, no one knew what the situation would be like when a child was born under such circumstances. However, a female white tiger made Lin Feng feel a little strange. Why does it sound a little awkward to be used as a mount? Hiss, why does it feel more and more awkward? Lin Feng shook his head, dispelling the random thoughts that suddenly emerged in his mind. When he turned his head, he saw that Xiao Yan had already returned to his senses, and was smiling at Yuanqing. "You'll benefit from following me." As he spoke, a fiery light flashed in his eyes. A domineering bluish-purple demonic fire appeared and condensed in Xiao Yan's eyes into a ferocious tiger roaring at the sky. Its killing intent was awe-inspiring and domineering. It was the image of a white tiger condensed with the netherworld evil flame. When Yuanqing first saw Xiao Yan, she could feel that he was extremely powerful. He was so powerful that she almost suffocated. Although he was not as powerful as her father, the White Tiger Great Sage, he could easily crush her to death. However, the pride that was inherent in her race's bloodline, and engraved in the depths of her demon soul, made her unwilling to easily surrender. "I can admit that you are stronger than me and can easily kill me. But that doesn't mean that you can make me surrender, especially to be your mount." But now that she saw the white tiger formed by the netherworld evil flame in Xiao Yan's eyes, Yuanqing suddenly felt her heart throbbing. That throbbing came from the fact that she felt as if she could see the possibility of improving on the powerful foundation that she already had, and achieving greater achievements than she had expected. This discovery surprised Yuanqing. She lowered her head and pondered for a while, then turned her head to look at Lin Feng beside her. Finally, she bowed slightly to Xiao Yan, expressing her intention to surrender. Xiaoyan chuckled. Now my mount know in master's words, it's my carriage. It's definitely very cool. He circled around Yuanqing and said with a smile, if it's a white tiger with an immortal demon soul, it'll be even cooler. Not now, but it will be soon. Yuanqing snorted proudly, then looked at Xiaoyan from the corner of her eyes. If you can make my father your mount, that'll be the coolest. The question is, do you have that ability? Xiaoyan raised his eyebrows, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Not now, but I will soon. Yuanqing glanced at Lin Feng beside her, then snorted at Xiaoyan. Say that again when you have half of Sect Master's abilities. The human and tiger stared at each other. Lin Feng looked at Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang with a smile. Yuanqing will carry your eldest senior brother, you two can come with master. As for master's mount. Lin Feng smiled and lightly tapped his finger. A tall figure appeared in front of everyone. It had the head of a tiger and the body of an ape, and its eyes were like the sun and moon. It was great sage Lu Yuan, whom Lin Feng had captured during his trip to the vast land of heaven. When the demon saw Lin Feng and his disciple, it bared its teeth with a wretched expression. However, it did not move at all, allowing Lin Feng to land on its shoulder. Although the Lin Feng before him was only a clone and not the main body, it was not like he had no room to resist. However, after being manipulated by Lin Feng for many years and setting up layers of restrictions, even if it was facing the most ordinary Xianmen Tianzong Jr. disciple, it would not have the guts to rebel. Xiaoyan, Zhu Yi, and Li Yuanfang looked at each other. Xiaoyan smiled and said, Master, you're still the coolest. A great demon of the astral soul as your mount. In terms of bloodline talent, Lu Yuan was naturally inferior to White Tiger. However, the great sage Lu Yuan's cultivation was far inferior to Yuanqing's. Lin Feng smiled and said, as for that old White Tiger, I still have other matters that I need his help with. This time, I'll deal with him first. He lowered his head and looked at great sage Lu Yuan. You don't have to feel wronged. In the past, you made things difficult for my disciple. I'm already being merciful by not taking your life. I have no intention of humiliating you. As long as you do your job diligently and atone for your sins, you might be able to regain your freedom in the future. In the future, as long as you don't offend me again, I won't make things difficult for you. At that time, if you want to stay in my sect, that's up to you. After you've made contributions, I'll never mistreat my own people. Do you understand? Great sage Lu Yuan was silent for a long time. He did not make a sound. In the end, he silently lowered his huge head, expressing his silent obedience. Lin Feng nodded. He looked at Xiaoyan, Zhu Yi, and Li Yuanfang. All right, gather your disciples. We'll be on our way. Chapter 1065. Between the gloomy heaven and earth, strands and strands of the 9 serenities, evil winds spread out in the void like black rays of light, constantly drifting and freezing everything it came into contact with. On the ground, scarlet and dirty blood flowed everywhere like a boundless sea of blood. On the surface of the sea of blood, huge blood bubbles formed and burst, emitting a suffocating stench. Within the sea of blood, everything seemed to have ceased to exist. There were only streaks of murky yellow water that crisscrossed and flowed silently. It was strange, unfathomable, and horrifying. It seemed as if it could purify everything. Yet it also caused everything to turn pale and lose its vitality. Countless huge ravines appeared on the ground. When the Nether Blood Sea and the Yellow Springs River encountered these ravines, they poured down like waterfalls. But these waterfalls were not at the bottom. From the deepest part of the abyss, a turbulent and domineering bluish-purple demonic fire soared into the sky, colliding with the dirty blood and the yellow water, causing cracks to appear in the space. Below the nether evil flame, there was the black and gloomy profound heaven calamity flame burning fiercely. Although it was not as violent as the nether evil flame, it was also constantly devouring everything to strengthen itself, revealing an extremely greedy and evil intent. Above the Rift Valley, under the nether evil wind in the sky, the earth was surging with a boundless red light, like fog, like wind, but not like wind. Within the red light, there were countless evil ghosts and spirits, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, screaming and howling. The fierce evil wind constantly rubbed against the Blood River True Water and the Yellow Springs True Water on the ground, causing violent collisions. The Nether Evil Flame, the Profound Heaven Calamity Flame, the Blood River True Water, the Yellow Springs True Water, the Nine Serenities Evil Wind, the Nether Evil Wind, and other fierce forces that were rarely seen in the outside world seemed to be endless and could be seen everywhere. Rather than saying that this strange foreign space was filled with these disasters, it would be better to say that this side of the world was formed by these disasters. In addition, there were all kinds of natural disasters and earthly tribulations raging in this vast and boundless foreign space. Everything seemed like the end of the world. This was a completely unsuitable place for any sentient life to live. Even those with the strongest willpower, who had experienced endless hardships and dangers, would be dazzled when they stepped into this world. Because this was the Nether Earth Sea, the most mysterious place in the 7 seas of heavenly origin. Apart from the Spirit Sea and the Dead Sea, there were no resources or life in this place, only endless destructive power and terrifying disasters. Even the chaotic empty sea and void battlefield didn't always have terrifying void turbulence erupting. Although it was extremely dangerous for cultivators to enter, they could at least survive and hide. Within the Netherworld Ocean, there were all sorts of evil energies everywhere. This was a world completely made up of calamities. However, in this world, there was an area where space was completely distorted, as if it was constantly changing. The chaotic space formed many worlds within worlds, relying on the existence of the Netherworld Ocean world. They were like giant bubbles, floating between heaven and earth. These bubbles were separated from each other, and did not come into contact with each other, so it was difficult for them to discover each other. Because of the chaotic changes in space, it looked like they were very close to each other from afar, but in reality they were very far apart. If someone came out of one of the small worlds, they would not be able to go to the other small worlds. At the same time, very few people would come out and directly step into the Netherworld Sea to face the overwhelming calamity. In these small worlds, because of the special energy isolation, the world within the world within the world, although there were Nether Evil Emperor and other calamities wreaking havoc, it was much safer than the outside world. All of the worlds within the world, although they did not come into contact with each other, and it was difficult to detect the existence of other small worlds, but in reality, these worlds within the world were all connected by a mysterious existence. It was a bright red pillar of light, standing tall in the Netherworld Ocean world, as if it was the pillar that held up the heavens. But this bright red pillar of light made one unable to feel at ease when they saw it, and unable to be at ease. Instead, it made one feel even more uneasy, making one feel danger and fear. One world within a world, under the chaotic interweaving of space, surrounded this bright red pillar of light. One of the world within a world was surrounded by black fog all year round, unable to see the light of day. In the center of the black fog stood a giant palace. Its style wasn't very beautiful, but it was majestic and grand. It was just that the gloomy feeling of the palace made this grand atmosphere dilute by a lot, adding a sense of strangeness to it. In the depths of the palace, there was a tunnel that led to a quiet room. Outside the quiet room, there were 4 stone statues, all black and tall, emitting waves of evil and deathly aura. Suddenly, the 4 stone statues trembled at the same time, and as if they had come to life, they turned to look at the other end of the tunnel. There was a white-as-paper-skinned, handsome face, but his expression was cruel and gloomy, a black-clothed youth, walking towards the quiet room. The black-clothed youth walked to the outside of the quiet room, stopping, not saying a word. And one of the 4 stone statues turned to look at the quiet room. A low voice sounded out. "Master, Gongzize is here." After a long while, the door to the quiet room suddenly opened. The black-clothed youth stepped in. The door closed behind him. The 4 black stone statues once again fell silent. Within the quiet room, a black-clothed Taoist with his back facing the door silently sat cross-legged. This was a quiet room, the 4 sides of the walls, the ceiling above his head, the floor below his feet, everything seemed to be transparent, through which one could see the crazy and brutal Netherworld Ocean calamity outside. The black-clothed youth bowed to the Taoist. "Greetings, master." The black-clothed Taoist did not speak, still minding his own business and meditating. The black-clothed youth called Gongzizhe did not seem to be in a hurry, silently kneeling on the ground, waiting for the black-clothed Taoist to stop. After a long while, the black-clothed Taoist finally stopped and asked calmly, "What is it?" Gongzizhe replied, "There is news from the ancient world of immortals, that the master of the Taoist Xianmen personally went to the ancient world to propose marriage for his disciple Xiaoyan to Gu Zhen, the daughter of the current clan leader of the Gu clan." The black-clothed Taoist said, "This is already within our expectations." Gongzizhe remained silent. The black-clothed Taoist stood up from the ground, turned around and looked at him. "Master knows that you have thoughts about Gu Zhen, but it is best to give up this idea as soon as possible. Otherwise it will only ruin His Majesty's and Master's plans. Right now, let Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple fight. It is not appropriate for us to expose the slightest trace of our whereabouts." This black-clothed Taoist turned around. He had the appearance of a middle-aged Taoist, his face like jade, his beard 3 feet long. His demeanor was rather outstanding, but his skin was extremely pale, giving him an extra eerie feeling. But all of this was not as frightening as the expression in his eyes. Looking into his eyes, it was as if he was watching the terrifying scene of destruction in the netherworld ocean outside. This disciple understands. Gongzizhe's gaze had an instant of brutality, unwillingness, cruelty and madness. His mana and aura were somewhat unstable, but he quickly restrained his impulses, regaining his calm. The black-clothed Taoist looked at him indifferently. "It is best that you understand. Not to mention that this trip of Xianmen Tianzong may not be smooth. Even if it is just a marriage proposal, it will also cause the ancient world of immortals and Xianmen Tianzong to become extremely close. Taishu Temple will not sit idly by." Gongzizhe nodded. "Master's teachings are right. When His Majesty ascends to the throne again, are you still afraid that a mere woman will not be able to do it? Don't let yourself wallow in desire. That way you will not be able to achieve great things." Silently, the black-clothed Taoist said, "After so many years, His Majesty has finally returned to the world. I have suffered in this netherworld ocean for so many years, and it is finally time for me to come out. No one, no matter what, is allowed to destroy this great plan." Gongzizhe kowtowed and said, "Reincarnation Taoist and Netherworld Taoist have both fallen. Underworld Hall Master Su Anda has betrayed His Majesty and was killed. His Majesty only has you as his successor, Master. With this success, Master, you will definitely be above tens of thousands of people." This black-clothed Taoist was the third disciple of the king of the underworld, Yuming Taoist, who had been missing all these years. As expected, he was hiding in the netherworld ocean, plotting in secret. He shook his head. "It is still too early to say these things." Gongzizhe asked again, "But the remnant stone of heavenly calamity in the ancient world of immortals, and that Xiaoyan?" Yuming Taoist waved his hand. "Let's think about it at length. Now is not the time. Quietly waiting for the war between the two worlds to begin is what we should do." "Yes, Master." Gongzizhe nodded. After a slight hesitation, he looked at Yuming Taoist and asked, "Master, how is His Majesty's recovery? Xianmen Tianzong, Taishu Temple, Great Qin Dynasty, Great Zhou Dynasty, and other forces are all looking for him. Other than the netherworld ocean realm, where else is safe?" Yuming Taoist looked at him silently. "This is not something you should be asking." Yuming Taoist hurriedly bowed. "This disciple has spoken indiscreetly. Please forgive me, Master." Yuming Taoist waved his sleeve. "Go to the netherworld pool and stay for 10 days as punishment." "Yes, Master." Gongzizhe's body trembled slightly, as if he had thought of something terrifying, but he did not dare to have any objections. Instead, as if he had been pardoned, he left the room. After he left, the 4 stone statues outside the door trembled slightly, and one of them said coldly, "Shintazhe becomes stupid when it comes to matters involving the daughter of the Gu clan leader. He is the disciple that Master is most proud of. With his current cultivation in our world within a world, he can be said to be the #1 person below Master. Even among the subordinates of His Majesty, he is one of the strongest." Another stone statue said, "If he can break through the knot in his heart, his future will definitely be limitless." The first stone statue to speak coldly snorted. "I hope that today's matter will wake him up. Otherwise, he will completely disappoint Master, and he will have no future to speak of. As he walked out of the passageway step by step, and passed through the great hall, Shintaze's expression was still very gloomy. He silently walked into the netherworld pool that Yuming Daoist used to punish his subordinates. Those who entered the netherworld pool, it was as if they had directly stepped into the netherworld ocean. It was just that there would not be any danger to their lives, but for those who were punished, it was unspeakably painful, a life worse than death. But when Shintaze's entire body sank into the netherworld pool, and was submerged by the pool water, a faint smile that was hard to understand appeared on his face. At the same time, Lin Feng and his disciples also officially stepped into the ancient longevity world. Chapter 1066. The myriad worlds in the heavens all had their own mysteries. The domain passageways that connected to the vast thousand worlds were also very strange. Just like the dimensional world where the underworld hall was hiding, the only passageway was connected to the void battlefield. The domain passageway that connected the ancient longevity world and the vast thousand worlds was also quite special. It was a passageway that could be opened or closed, just like the star gate that Lin Feng had to enter and exit the desolate ancient star sea. However, although it could be opened and closed, the location of the entrance and exit was fixed. The control of opening and closing was in the hands of the Gu clan. Whether it was opened or closed was decided by the Gu clan. Therefore, it was very difficult for the outside world to freely enter and exit the ancient longevity world. Although it was not as secretive as the dimensional world where the underworld hall was hiding, it was almost isolated from the outside world. Other than a few people, very few people knew how to go to the ancient longevity world. Most people did not even know of the existence of this dimensional world. However, in order to keep it a secret, the ancient emperor rarely opened the passageway. To enter and exit the vast thousand worlds, they had to go through their special identity. Every time someone entered the vast thousand worlds, it would attract the attention of the few people who knew about it. Therefore, unless it was necessary, the ancient longevity world was always in a closed state. If the Gu clan's golden elixir cultivators wanted to go through the void thunder tribulation, a considerable number of people would rather choose the dangerous void battlefield. When Xiao Yan first went to the ancient longevity world, it was Xiao Zhener who guided him. Taking advantage of the opening of the domain passageway, he snuck into the ancient longevity world. And when Lin Feng went to find Xiao Yan, it was because he had left a mark on Xiao Yan's body, and then borrowed the power of the mysterious sky treasure tree to cross the void and rush over. However, the world changed. After the Battle of Xiling City, the communication between Xianmen Tianzong and the ancient longevity world was no longer so difficult. Before, when Xiao Yan went to the ancient longevity world again, he would first contact the Gu clan, and then they would open the domain passageway and openly enter the ancient longevity world. This trip of Lin Feng and his disciple was naturally the same. The group traveled south, met up with Yang Qing, and then came to the southern wasteland together. Yang Qing had been practicing medicine outside for the past few years. Most of his time was spent on picking herbs and treating illnesses. He did not have a heavenly cave that could accelerate time, nor did he have a lot of time to cultivate. Therefore, his current cultivation realm had fallen behind a lot. Not only had he been surpassed by Li Yuanfang and Luo Qinggu, but even his disciple Zhou Yunsong was about to catch up with him. But right now Yang Qing is no longer like in the past when he was young, worrying about his slow progress, afraid of losing face for Lin Feng. Instead, he is not impatient. His state of mind is as calm as usual. In addition to his daily medical practice, he would also try to figure out Dao skills and divine arts to train his magical power. He would think a lot and accumulate a lot of inspiration. Now that his wish had been fulfilled, his mind was clear, and his perception of the Tao of heaven and earth had deepened. At the same time, as he traveled around the world, he had encountered quite a few fortuitous encounters, and gained quite a lot. At this moment, Yang Qing was just short of water to grind and seriously accumulate and absorb her harvest. Over the past few days, Yang Qing had only returned to Jade Capital Mountain once. He felt that he had accumulated enough, and that it was time to sort it out. Thus, he cultivated in the mysterious sky-time cave for a period of time. Under the hundredfold acceleration of time, he successfully broke through the bottleneck and advanced to the middle stage of the Yuanying realm. However, after that, Yangqing left the mountain once again and resumed his career as a doctor. Now he was still in the middle stage of Yuanying. However, when Lin Feng, Xiao Yan and the others saw the light in his eyes, they knew that his accumulation had once again become extremely abundant. The only thing left for him to improve further was the painstaking work of accumulating and organizing. Fifth junior brother, long time no see. Xiao Yan said with a smile. Yangqing also smiled and said, "Yes, I didn't expect that I would be able to meet eldest senior brother at the right time to propose marriage." Xiao Yan said, "That's right, there's someone you should meet." He spread his sleeves and a figure flew in front of Yangqing. It was a young man with delicate features and a gentle temperament. This young man's temperament and mental state were somewhat similar to Yangqing's when he was young. He was gentle and polite, causing people to feel warmth in their hearts. When Yangqing saw him, he smiled and said, "You're Duanmu, right? You've already grown up." When the young man saw Yangqing, his expression was also somewhat emotional. Even the rims of his eyes were slightly red. He solemnly bowed towards Yangqing and said, "Disciple Duanmu Hong greets fifth senior granduncle." He was an infant that Yangqing had picked up at the bank of a spirit spring called Luohong after the battle of the exterminating Xian dynasty. He only had a jade pendant on him that had the word Duanmu engraved on it, so Yangqing named him Duanmu Hong. At that time, Duanmu Hong was seriously ill and on the verge of death. Yangqing took care of him along the way and finally made the child recover. Then, when he returned to Jade Capital Mountain, he brought him up the mountain. When he was slightly older, he passed the entrance examination and became a foundation disciple. When Duanmu Hong was young, he displayed great interest and talent in medicine and the way of pills. When he was still a foundation disciple, he even followed Yangqing to practice medicine for a short period of time. He also specially went to the Mirror Lake Academy founded by Zhu Yi to study. As for Yangqing, she was his savior, and also someone he admired and respected. However, Yangqing was often not on the mountain, and had temporarily given up on the idea of taking him in as a disciple. As for Zhou Yunsong, he was not proficient in medicine and the way of alchemy. Thus, after Duanmu Hong passed the direct disciple examination, he became Fen Tianya's disciple to learn. He was now Tang Jun's direct disciple. Although he was only at the foundation stage, his level of alchemy was already quite exquisite. Moreover, his talent in cultivation was also extremely high. He was extremely outstanding among the third-generation direct disciples of Fen Tianya, and was highly anticipated. Xiao Yan and Tang Jun also thought very highly of this diligent and talented young disciple. Sometimes Xiao Yan would even personally give him pointers on the way of alchemy. Yangqing looked at the sick child who was on the verge of death back then. Now he had grown up and had a bright future. His heart was filled with joy. Lin Feng looked at the few of them reminiscing about the old days and smiled. However, at this moment his heart suddenly moved and he raised his eyes to look at the distant horizon. He sat cross-legged on the great sage Lu Yuan's shoulder. On the other shoulder, Zhu Yi's gaze also fell in the same direction. On the other side, Xiao Yan sat cross-legged on the back of the distant star White Tiger. He also looked into the distant horizon. There the void opened and three figures appeared. The one in front was a tall middle-aged man with a thin face. Beside him, there were two other men on his left and right. The aura of the three people was like a deep pool and a high mountain. It was contained and not released. The middle-aged man with a thin face in the lead was impressively at the Tao integration realm. The two people beside him were also at the void return realm. One of them could be considered a familiar face. It was Gu Peng who had rushed to Jade Jing Mountain with Xiao Zhen, during the battle of exterminating Xian. All these years, when Xiao Yan went to the ancient immortals world, he was usually in charge of receiving them. As for the middle-aged man with a thin face, Xiao Yan had also seen him before. He used his dermic power to transmit his voice to Lin Feng and the others. "Master, this is also Zhen Er's uncle. His name is Gu Cheng. I call him Uncle Cheng like Zhen Er." After a short pause, Xiao Yan continued, In the bloodline of the ancient emperors, they are too inclined towards our Xianmen Tianzong. Lin Feng, Zhu Yi, and Li Yuanfang heard this and immediately understood. Within the bloodline of the ancient emperors, there were also different opinions about the future development of Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple. Among the three great experts within the clan, Xiao Zhener's father, the new generation ancient emperor and the current clan leader of the ancient clan, Gu Jun, was at the first tribulation stage. At the same time, he was also the strongest expert in the bloodline of the ancient emperors. He had never expressed his position clearly, but he had tacitly allowed Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen to interact, which could be considered as showing some inclination. The other two great experts were at the Dao integration realm. Gu Cheng, who was in front of them, favored Xianmen Tianzong, while the other generation elder, Gu Yuankai, who was Gu Jun and Gu Cheng's uncle, favored Taishu Temple. What is worth mentioning is that the Gu clan currently has 2 Mahayana-level magic treasures. One has never expressed its position. The other agrees with Gu Yuankai's point of view, more optimistic that the Void Temple will prevail in the future. When Gu Cheng and Gu Peng saw Lin Feng and the others, they also came forward to welcome them. Master of the Celestial Gate, we greet you. Their gazes fell on great sage Lu Yuan and the Yuanqing White Tiger. Although their expressions did not change, their hearts were beating wildly. This white tiger seems to be pure-blooded? Gu Cheng and the others were a little surprised. They had never seen a pure-blooded white tiger before, but they could feel the demonic power fluctuations and power intent from Yuanqing's body. After all, there was a huge difference between a pure-blooded white tiger and a mixed-blooded white tiger. If there were still some doubts about Yuanqing White Tiger, then Great Sage Lu Yuan was a great demon at the Star Soul Fusion realm. Gu Cheng and the others would not have the slightest misunderstanding. This should be the Lu Yuan that the Master of the Celestial Gate captured when he went to Infinite Wasteland in the past. It is rumored that he is extremely powerful. Although Great Sage Lu Yuan did not have a terrifying demonic power aura around him, Gu Cheng and the others would not underestimate him in the slightest. Right now this big demon looks harmless, but that's because under Lin Feng's orders, he completely restrained his demon energy aura. Otherwise, if he recklessly displayed it, forget about Gu Cheng, even Gu Peng and Gu Liang would be under immense pressure. Having Great Sage Lu Yuan as a mount was indeed flashy, but Lin Feng did not have the slightest intention of giving Gu City and the others a show of strength. With Lin Feng's current status, he naturally did not need to do so. Moreover, Gu Cheng, Gu Peng, and Gu Liang were all ancient clan experts who were close to the Celestial Sect of Wonders. When Gu Cheng and the others saw this scene, they nodded in their hearts. It is really not easy to subdue such a great demon. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Thank you for coming to welcome us." A Dao Integration Realm expert and 2 Void Return Realm experts came out of the ancient world together. They even left the Realm Passageway entrance to welcome them. Compared to the ancient emperor's bloodline that had always been closed off, such a welcome was extremely grand. Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Yangqing, and Li Yuanfang also cupped their hands in greeting. Gu Qing smiled and said, "Your master and disciple are too serious. Since the master of the Celestial Gate has personally come to visit, our clan will naturally not be disrespectful." He gestured with his hand. "Everyone this way please." The group continued south and soon saw a huge realm passageway entrance in the sky. Xiao Yan had been here more than once, so he had naturally introduced it to his master and senior and junior brothers. When everyone saw the geographical location of the realm passageway entrance, they knew that it was the entrance to the ancient longevity world. Through the realm passageway, they could vaguely see an incomparably vast world in the distance. Chapter 1067. Upon entering the ancient longevity world, an ancient and desolate aura surged towards them, causing them to feel that this place was desolate and primitive. As far as the eye could see, all they could see was a desolate wasteland, which made this place seem even more dilapidated. However, upon closer inspection, they could feel that this dimensional realm seemed to contain endless vitality amidst the desolation. The flow of spiritual energy in this world, alternating between desolation and decline, and flourishing, existed in a unique and profound way. The ancient longevity world lives up to its name. It is indeed worthy of its name. Zhu Yi stood on the wasteland, and after sensing for a moment, he understood the profoundness. Generally speaking, a dimensional realm cannot be compared to a great thousand world. Its rate of decline is much faster than that of the great thousand divine land or infinite wasteland. This is especially so when there are a large number of cultivators living and cultivating there. A dimensional realm is like a living being. It has its own lifespan and limits. It will age and decline, and when it exceeds its limits, the spiritual energy in the dimensional realm will gradually dissipate, and it will become a very ordinary world. Mortals can live normally, and plants and animals can also reproduce normally. However, for us cultivators, it is no longer beneficial for cultivation, and it is difficult for all kinds of heavenly treasures to form. Li Yuanfang looked at the world in front of him, and after a moment he nodded. That is indeed so. However, generally speaking, the rate of spiritual energy in a dimensional realm is also very slow. However, this ancient longevity world has existed for too long. The descendants of the ancient emperors have been recuperating here for a long time, and it has been passed down from generation to generation. It has already been such a long time since the end of the ancient times, but the flow of spiritual energy in this ancient longevity world is still so strong, as if it has not been corroded by the passage of time. It is really rare. I think it should be related to the mysterious changes in spiritual energy that we are feeling right now, and the principle of the transformation between desolation and revival. Li Yuanfang's eyes lit up, and he said, "This is the result of a formation." Zhu Yi and he both looked toward Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan smiled and nodded. The ancient emperor's bloodline wanted to hide from the world, to be self-sufficient as much as possible, to have less contact with the outside world. Frequently moving and changing places is not good. That's why from the very beginning, Zhang Er's ancestors built the imperial city in this realm, and laid down the South Pole longevity formation with the imperial city as the center. The changes we are feeling in the ancient realm right now is the result of the spreading influence of the South Pole longevity formation's power. Over the years, the ancestors of the Gu family continuously strengthened and improved the formation, and set up arrangements in the ancient world. Now the formation's power has affected every inch of the land here. Yang Qing looked around. I heard eldest senior brother mention before that there are many spiritual grasses and medicines that are almost extinct in the vast thousand worlds here. Under the cover of the South Pole longevity formation, their growth and reproduction should be very vigorous. Speaking of which, the development of the path of alchemy and medicine in the human cultivation world has made several great leaps. Two of them were in the ancient times, during the reign of Xia Huang and the ancient emperor. Unfortunately, they did not get along well with each other, and there was also the king of the underworld in between. Otherwise, the path of alchemy and medicine would have developed even more rapidly in that era. Hearing Yang Qing's words, Xiaoyan smiled. Fifth junior brother, you are the same as me in the past. People spread false rumors, and many truths are buried in the long history. People who do not understand the inside story often make the wrong interpretation. What? Yang Qing was slightly startled. Xiaoyan smiled and said, regarding Xia Huang and the ancient emperor, I once inadvertently mentioned it in a casual conversation with Zhen. Later, I heard from Zhen, or that I roughly knew what was going on. When Xia Huang was on the throne, the ancient emperor only began to learn Tao. There were indeed conflicts between the two, but it was not between Xia Huang himself and the ancient emperor. Instead, it was Xia Huang's people who were unfilial and tyrannical, bullying the ancient emperor and his people. Xiaoyan said slowly, Xia Huang can be said to be a wise ruler. He vigorously developed the path of alchemy and medicine, refining Ding of Shenzhou, and preferred to support the growth of cultivators with potential and talent. Many experts who rose later, when they were just starting out, had received the favor of Xia Huang. In that era, when Qiyang shouldered the divine land with an iron shoulder, and shook Tianhuang region alone, while Xia Huang helped the human cultivation world accumulate strength. But Xia Huang was generous to other cultivators and even more generous to his own people, to the extent of condoning and shielding them. At that time, there were many people in Xia Huang's clan who used the tiger's power to intimidate others, and they were very unhappy with other human forces. They often needed Xia Huang's help to clean up the aftermath. Xiaoyan said and shook his head. It is natural to be generous to one's own people. Whether it is the main sect, Taishu Temple, Mount Shu, the state of Zhou, or the state of Qin, except for a few forces, everyone is the same. But there is always a need for daily teaching and discipline. But no one is perfect. Xia Huang is good at everything, but not only is he lenient to his own people when they commit crimes, he is also negligent in daily discipline, so that there are many crooked people. If the filthy things they commit were done by the disciples of the main sect, any one of them would be enough to abolish their cultivation and put them in prison for life. Some of them would even be directly punished. Many people often choose to bear with it for Xia Huang's sake, but the contradictions are actually piling up. At this point, Xiaoyan paused for a moment. Although the contradictions against the rule of the human emperor completely erupted during the reign of the king of the underworld, in fact, when Xia Huang was on the throne, the seeds of dissatisfaction had already been planted. It was just that Xia Huang was wise and tolerant. Although the seeds had taken root, they did not really germinate and burst out of the soil. Zhu Yi, Yangqing, and Li Yuanfang all nodded when they heard this. Zhu Yi said slowly, when the king of the underworld first ascended the throne, before he showed his fangs, he had also pretended to be a wise ruler for many years. At the beginning, he relied on settling the crimes of Xia Huang's people. Not only did he not make people feel cold in their hearts, but he also won the praise of the entire divine land, and won the hearts of many people. It can be seen how hated Xia Huang's people were at that time. Thinking that Xia Huang had died because of the king of the underworld's assassination, everyone could not help but fall silent for a moment. Xiaoyan continued, Xia Huang, including Empress Xia Huang, was generous to his people. He especially doted on his children. Xia Huang's son was lustful, arrogant and domineering. He often snatched and occupied beautiful women, many of whom were noble ladies from other human forces. It can be said that other than Taishu Temple, which he did not dare to directly snatch, there was no one else in the divine land that he did not dare to do. Once, he forcefully snatched a woman from the ancient emperor's clan, which caused the ancient clan to rebel. Xiaoyan sighed. After the incident, Xia Huang received a report. After understanding the situation, he also punished his son and clansmen. However, because of Xia Huang's son's plea for leniency, at the end of the day, he lifted them up high and let them down lightly. Xia Huang greatly compensated the ancient clan in terms of resources. He also gave pointers to many of the younger generation of the ancient clan. The ancient emperor, who had just realized the great path at that time, was one of them. When the ancient emperor was young, he displayed outstanding aptitude. Thus, Xia Huang valued him and focused on cultivating him. Strictly speaking, the two of them could even be considered half teacher and half disciple. Therefore, the ancient emperor actually respected Xia Huang very much. Xiaoyan said, however, it was a pity that he and Xia Huang's son were like fire and water. In the future, there were many disputes and frictions. However, for the sake of Xia Huang, the ancient emperor tolerated them most of the time. Yangqing nodded in understanding. The rumors of the discord between Xia Huang and the ancient emperor actually originated from the grudges between the ancient emperor and Xia Huang's clansmen. Xiaoyan nodded. That's right. According to the ancient records of the Zhen clan, when the news of Xia Huang's death came, the ancient emperor once wore mourning clothes for Xia Huang as a disciple in private. His gaze swept across the wasteland in front of the ancient longevity world. Among the previous human emperors, the ones who were most proficient in concocting elixirs were Emperor Chong, Xia Huang, and the ancient emperor. Emperor Chong completed the first systematic integration of the art of concocting elixirs in the history of the human clan. He laid the foundation for all the later generations. Xia Huang forged the most powerful Dharma treasure in the history of the divine land, Ding of Shenzhou. As for the great formation of longevity in the South Pole that the ancient emperor created, one of its great uses was to assist in concocting elixirs. In terms of the Tao of formations, this is the most suitable formation to assist in concocting elixirs. The few times Xiaoyan had come to the ancient longevity world, although out of courtesy, He did not specially study the grand longevity formation of the South Pole. But with his current level of cultivation and his high attainments in the Tao of alchemy, with the two combined, he was able to gain some benefits from it. It was a reference for his alchemy skills to increase. Li Yuanfang closed his eyes. After a while, he opened his eyes again and nodded. Although it's like looking at flowers through the fog, this formation is indeed very useful. It has a very strong fertility effect. It is not inferior to our sex yin and yang life and death formation, which can transform the aura of death into life. It is not as strong and fast as the transformation of life and death. However, it is continuous, as if it is endless and longer. The disciples continued to communicate with each other through their transcendence energy. Lin Feng's god of war doppelganger also walked side by side with Gu Cheng. Gu Qing pondered and said, "Sect leader Lin, I have something to tell you." Taishu Temple's temple head Yan Nanlai, together with Grand Elder Wu Mengqi and Lord Qing Ning, the current Empyrean Walker Lin Daohan, and a group of juniors will also be visiting the ancient longevity world today. Hearing this, Lin Feng turned to look at Gu Cheng. Gu Cheng continued, "According to Taishu Temple, they are here to exchange their knowledge on the Tao of alchemy with our tribe." He paused for a while, then continued, "Our tribe has a lost remnant of a pill recipe from Taishu Temple. This is also the purpose of their visit." Although that was what he said, Gu Cheng's meaning was actually very clear. If it was really just for the exchange of pill recipes and alchemy, then Lord Qing Ning alone would be enough. At this time, Yan Nanlai personally led a team to the ancient longevity world. His purpose was self-evident. However, for some reason, none of the 4 Taishu elders came. However, it was hard to say whether they had something to do and couldn't leave, or whether they were temporarily biding their time. After all, the ancient longevity world was not like the desolate ancient star ocean. If they really wanted to come, it would be much easier. With a fellow Taoist from Taishu Temple as a witness to this joyous event between our two sides, they are truly the most suitable guests. It will add to the festive atmosphere. Lin Feng smiled and looked forward. A majestic city appeared on the horizon. In the middle of the city, there was a palace. Although it was not dazzling, it was dignified and imposing. It had a kind of ancient style that was not commonly seen nowadays. Naturally, it exuded a dignified atmosphere, like a royal palace. Chapter 1068. The group entered the city and came to the front of the palace. Lin Feng and the others could feel many auras and fluctuations of consciousness along the way, which were filled with curiosity. However, the Gu clan was clearly well educated. When the clansmen learned that Lin Feng and his disciple had come, they were curious, but they did not panic, nor did they rush to the streets to watch. Many people stood before the palace. All of them possessed profound cultivations, and they revealed the formidable strength and resources that the Gu clan had accumulated for many years. Even though they were limited to a corner of the world, and it was difficult for them to recover the flourishing atmosphere they had during the ancient times, they still couldn't be underestimated. The people gathered here were naturally the elites of the Gu clan. Even some of the young people with low cultivation were full of spirit and energy, displaying a good appearance and deep potential. In the center of the crowd was a middle-aged man. He was not very tall, but wherever he stood, that place seemed to be the center of the ancient longevity world. He looked ordinary and unremarkable, but as he breathed, the spirit qi of the entire dimensional world seemed to be swallowed by him. Zhui looked at him, his gaze becoming more serious. "Then you should be Miss Zhaner's father, the current leader of the Gu clan, Senior Gu Jun, right?" Xiaoyan nodded. "That's right." This middle-aged man was extremely handsome, and there were some similarities between his eyebrows and Xiaojun Er's. Even now, he looked like a very handsome man, and the hardships of time only added to his charm. He wore a simple robe, but he had the majesty of an emperor. Not as domineering and vigorous as Liang Pan and Qin Emperor Shiryu, but more distant and profound. When Lin Feng saw him, he smiled and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Gu, for coming to personally welcome me." Gu Jun also smiled. "You are too polite, Taoist Gu." He looked at Xiaoyan, who was beside Lin Feng. Xiaoyan stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, Senior Gu." Lin Feng's gaze fell on a white-haired old man beside Gu Jun. The old man's expression was calm as he smiled. I am Gu Yuankai, and I welcome Taoist Gu to the ancient longevity world. You're welcome, Tao Master Spiritual Awareness. Lin Feng nodded. Other than Gu Jun, Gu Yuankai, Gu Cheng, Gu Peng, and Gu Liang, the other members of the ancient emperor's bloodline also stepped forward to pay their respects. There was a young girl in the crowd. She wore a light green dress, and she was slender and elegant. Her slender figure was untainted by even a speck of dust, and she was like a green lotus that had bloomed in the mortal world. She smiled and bowed to Lin Feng. Elder Lin, welcome to the Holy Cross. Lin Feng sized her up and said with a smile, although it took a long time, Miss Shen'er's success in this trial is really worth celebrating. The girl was Xiao Zhen, she smiled and said, Senior Lin, you flatter me. She looked at Xiao Yan, and their eyes met. Both of them were overjoyed. Even according to the time of the vast thousand world, they hadn't seen each other for several years. Including the time they spent in the Time Grotto, it had been a long time. For Xiao Zhen, if it wasn't because Lin Feng was here and she was worried about being rude, even if it was in front of her father and the other elders of the family, she would have already thrown herself into Xiao Yan's arms and hugged him. Although the two restrained themselves, this scene was naturally seen by Lin Feng, Gu Jun, and the others. Gu Yuankai and Gu Qing looked at each other and communicated with their divine sense. Gu Qing smiled and said, a match made in heaven. But it also added a lot of trouble for us. Gu Yuankai said calmly. Gu Yuankai said calmly. Gu Qing glanced at him and said in a similarly calm tone. Just from the current point of view, being an ally of the celestial sect of wonders is more worthy of our trust. This has nothing to do with strength, but rather with their daily behavior. In the ancient times, the ruthless bandits rebelled and killed the longevity ancestor. They even hunted the other ancestors and clansmen, but the Taishu temple remained silent. Just because of this, it is hard for me to accept working with them. Hearing this, Gu Yuankai also fell into silence. That year, the tragic war between the two worlds had ended. The ancient emperor was heavily injured in the war against the demon clan, and the ancient clan's experts also suffered heavy casualties. In the end, the ruthless sovereign took the opportunity to kill and depose the ancient emperor, and made himself the human sovereign. The ruthless sovereign's position was originally improper, and after he ascended to the throne, he went against the rules, causing the divine land to fall into great chaos and internal wars. The ruthless sovereign also gathered some people around him, and fought against the human experts who opposed him. That was also the most turbulent period in the ancient era of the divine land. The period when the ruthless sovereign was on the throne was also the lowest period in the history of the Taishu temple. In the last years of Xia Huang, although Ji Huang Xinyuan was defeated, when Qiang died, and the Haotian mirror, which was not yet complete, was heavily damaged again. After that, the king of the underworld gradually revealed his fangs, and in the battle to depose the king of the underworld, the Haotian mirror aimed at the human experts of the divine land for the first time. In the end, although it killed the king of the underworld, the Haotian mirror's recovery was almost indefinitely delayed, and the second-generation temple master of the Taishu temple, who was also the last of the four heroes of the Great Void, Yan Xinghe, died. In the war between the two worlds, when the ancient emperor was seriously injured, the third-generation temple master of the Taishu temple also died. Before the Taishu temple fully recovered, the Haotian mirror worked together with the ancient emperor to kill the saint emperor of the demon clan at that time, but its recovery was still a long way off. The Taishu temple also entered the weakest period in its history, and the fourth-generation temple master Chang Yun, who took over the position, chose to stay silent and defend the White Cloud Mountain at the beginning of the ruthless sovereign's rampage. Although his decision bought time for the Taishu temple and the Haotian mirror to recover, and in the last years of the ancient era, the Haotian mirror aimed at the human experts of the divine land for the second time, and joined forces with the Tian men to kill the ruthless sovereign, putting an end to the tyranny together. However, such a decision naturally did not make the descendants of the ancient emperor happy. Gu Cheng said calmly, Ancestor Chang Sheng has already died, and Heavenly Emperor Kong and the Tian men have not reached their peak yet. If the Taishu Temple takes action, it will be difficult for them to do so alone. Although they can keep the ruthless sovereign in check, it will cause the Haotian mirror to recover slower and slower. This is not wrong, and I am not naive enough to think that the Taishu Temple should have fought the ruthless sovereign to protect the ancient race, and no one owes anyone anything. However, an eye for an eye. Since no one owes anyone anything, it naturally doesn't stop me from choosing to support their enemies if I don't like them. What they chose back then was their freedom, and what they choose now is our freedom. Gu Yuankai looked at Lin Feng, who was talking to Gu Jun, and sighed. Times have changed, and time has passed. It is no longer the same as it was in the past. You and I should help the clan leader decide the future of our race, but we should still act rationally and not personally. Gu Qing said indifferently. Rationally speaking, both sides are evenly matched, and it is difficult to tell who is better. At this time, we will naturally have to see who is better or worse. Gu Yuankai shook his head. The key lies in the war between the two worlds. Let us wait and see. As the two were talking while the Gu people greeted Lin Feng, Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi Yangqing, and Li Yuanfeng also spread their manna. Tang Jun, Yin Wuwei, Lin Tong Yongtai, Ying Luozha, Zhou Yunsong, Tan Yunqing, and other junior disciples appeared together. A total of 64 Profound Gate disciples instantly lined up behind Lin Feng and the others, and then bowed to Gu Jun and the others. Greetings, seniors and fellow Taoists. Although little Lin Tong had formed her nascent soul long ago, she still maintained the appearance of a 12 or 13-year-old. She bowed to Gu Jun and the others. But she still secretly winked at Xiaozhen and Xiaozhen couldn't help but smile. Gu Jun and the others smiled and nodded. Profound Gate disciples indeed live up to their reputation. They weren't just being polite. From Gu Jun, Gu Yuankai, and Gu Qing to the other primordial divinity realm experts and Gu clansmen, they all looked at Tang Jun and the others with narrowed eyes. This time, the disciples who came with Lin Feng and Xiao Yin to the ancient longevity world didn't have the same cultivation level. There were also junior disciples who were at the foundation establishment stage. In the eyes of Gu Jun and the others, they didn't have any secrets to speak of. Their real age and cultivation level could be seen at a glance. But comparing the two, the Gu people were naturally slightly shocked. Gu Yuankai's white brows slightly furrowed. I remember 10 years ago, when Xianmen Tianzong opened their doors for the third time and held the Kunlun Dharma Assembly, the news was that all direct disciples who cultivated for more than 5 years would all reach the foundation establishment stage. Gu Qing nodded. Indeed. But looking at the cultivation speed of the new generation of direct disciples, it seems that it's even faster than before. Gu Yuankai pondered and said, although there are many people in the vast thousand world, the number of good seedlings suitable for cultivation is still limited. There are also Taishu Temple, the Great Qin Dynasty, and other forces competing. The new generation of direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong might not be much better than before. It's the difference in nurturing conditions. Gu Qing said slowly, as Xianmen Tianzong's strength continues to grow, their methods and resources to nurture disciples also continue to improve. It seems that the news they received from Ding of Shenzhou is true. Only a treasure like Ding of Shenzhou can allow the overall average level of the disciples to develop by leaps and bounds again. Gu Yuankai muttered to himself, Xia Huang's Ding of Shenzhou. His gaze swept across Tang Jun, Lin Tong, Yang Tai, Zhou Yunsong and Ying Rosa. They're all very young, and they haven't just formed their nascent souls. It's very likely that some of them already have the confidence to break through to the middle stage of Yuanying. Now that they have such magical powers and methods, they can only form their nascent souls even earlier. It's very likely that they haven't cultivated for more than 50 years. He then looked at Yen Wuwei, Tan Yunqing, and the others. They must have reached the peak of the late stage of golden elixir, and are only one step away from forming their nascent souls. Even though Gu Yuankai had lived for a long time and had seen many things, he still felt shocked at this moment. An early-stage Yuanying cultivator, or a late-stage golden elixir cultivator was nothing to him. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that with just a glance, the other party was already a dead man. Gu Yuankai also wouldn't care about a genius who successfully passed the Void Thunder Tribulation within 50 years and formed a Yuanian cultivator. In his long life, he had naturally seen such geniuses, and not just one or two of them, but a group of such outstanding geniuses had appeared in front of him at the same time, and they were all from the same sect, belonging to the first or second generation of disciples of neighboring sections. This caused Gu Yuankai to be moved. Chapter 1069. The appearance of one or two extraordinary talents might be a coincidence, and the accumulation of a large number of talents over the long years could be said to be the foundation of the inheritance. However, the appearance of a group of them in just a few decades was definitely not a coincidence. In the previous generation, the 8 direct disciples of the Celestial Gate of Wonders were all such extraordinary figures. The 4 heroes of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, including Xiao Yan, were even more outstanding, shocking the past and dazzling the present. Gu Cheng's voice sounded faintly. Even the Taishu Temple, from ancient times until now, has never been so prosperous in the cultivation of the younger generation of disciples. After the dual-pupiled individual was killed by Celestial Venerable Huang, Shi Tianhao, it seems that only Chen Xingyu and Guo Chaoyang have recently emerged from Taishu Temple. Our understanding of Taishu Temple is limited. I believe that they have other geniuses, but they probably can't reach the level of Xianmen Tianzong in front of us. Right now, we are not facing all of Xianmen Tianzong's geniuses. Among the younger generation of our clan in recent years, besides Zhener, there's only Lian Cheng. Ninth uncle, there may be a dispute about the strength of the two sides, but there is no doubt that Xianmen Tianzong's potential surpasses that of Taishu Temple. Gu Yuankai's expression was calm. It was naturally impossible for a person like him to be easily swayed by words. He indifferently said, "Hearing about Xianmen Tianzong is not as good as meeting them in person." Today, this old man also has to admit that although I did my best to overestimate Xianmen Tianzong, I still underestimated them in the end. Xianmen Tianzong is even stronger than we expected. In fact, this old man also somewhat agrees with your judgment. If there are no major changes, not much. If you give Xianmen Tianzong 1,000 years, they really might be able to surpass the Taishu Temple. Of course, the premise is that the master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders has a way to deal with the Haotian mirror in its perfect state. I heard that he has reforged his peerless sword. If it continues to develop at this rate, in 500 or 300 years, it might really change the world. Gu Yuankai turned his head to look at Gu Cheng. But who can guarantee that no major changes will occur? Although you and I live in a corner, we both know the situation in the Divine Land. Before the rise of Xianmen Tianzong, the Liang family of Great Zhou's national strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. They were eyeing the land like a hungry whale. If they were given a few thousand years to develop, they might have the opportunity to dominate the Divine Land. But what about now? Gu Yuankai sighed. At the very least, Taishu Temple has experienced the test of time and too many accidents, yet it still stands tall. Compared to Xianmen Tianzong and other factions, it is much more stable. Gu Cheng was also not someone who would easily change his mind after making up his mind. Upon hearing this, his expression was calm. Ninth uncle's words are not without reason, but I still think more highly of Xianmen Tianzong. As for Taishu Temple, I still have the same opinion. That is not a good ally. At least, when there are other similar options, Taishu Temple is not the best choice. Gu Cheng said lightly. Just like when the Chongqing ancestor was on the throne, among the past emperors, other than Xia Huang, the relationship between the Chongqing ancestor and Taishu Temple was the friendliest. But no matter how close they were, no matter how friendly their relationship was, in the end, it was all empty. They could only share blessings, but not trials and tribulations. It is true that most of the allies in the world are like this. But after the Chongqing ancestor deposed the king of the underworld, he shouldered the responsibility of protecting Shenzhou with his wounded body. Thus, Taishu Temple temporarily retreated behind the scenes to recuperate. Because of this, the ancestors of the Aboriginals suffered heavy casualties. The Chongqing ancestor did not fully recover until the last war between the two worlds. Because of the war with the Demon Clan, His old wounds had not yet healed, and new ones were added. This involves a grand strategy. The entire Shenzhou has benefited from the recovery of the Haotian mirror. For everyone, it is a matter of mutual benefit. Strictly speaking, no one owes anyone anything. However, the Chongqing ancestor and our clan can go through trials and tribulations together, but the Taishu temple cannot. This is actually not their fault. It is just a matter of their own choices. It has nothing to do with right or wrong. But when we make a choice again under the same conditions, when Taishu temple is not the only choice, I have always believed that people should not trip over the same rock twice. Slowly, Gu Yuankai said. As you said, most alliances and so-called allies are like this. If they were in the same situation, Xianmen Tianzong might not be able to perform better than Taishu temple. It might even be worse. Hearing this, Gu Cheng said calmly, just like what you said before, ninth uncle, it is also effective in this place. One has already been tested and cannot be relied on, and the other has not been tested. He looked at the white-haired Gu Yuankai beside him. It is hard to say what the current Taishu temple is like. But looking at their previous behavior, they only need valuable or obedient pawns. Of course, they will be happier if they are both valuable and obedient. Gu Yuankai sighed. It is still too early to say. Everything will have to wait until after the war between the two worlds. We will wait and see. Yes, we will wait and see. Hearing this, Gu Qing nodded and didn't say anything else. After greeting each other, Gu Jun said, Faction leader Lin and your disciples, please rest for now. We will talk in detail tomorrow. Lin Feng smiled. As a guest, please follow the host's wishes. Gu Jun turned to Gu Cheng. Escort faction leader Lin and your group to your residence. Arrange a guide for Xianmen Tianzong's disciples who want to tour Longevity City. If they want to move freely, it is not forbidden. Gu Qing nodded. Yes, brother. Gu Jun looked at Xiao Zhener and sighed. Go with your uncle Cheng. The marriage was not set yet. Even if it was set, it would only be an engagement, not a wedding. Xiao Zhener blushed a little, but she still nodded and said, Thank you, father. Lin Feng and his group followed Gu Cheng and Xiao Zhener through the palace. Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhener walked side by side, following behind Lin Feng and Gu Cheng. Zhener, looking at your appearance, you have completed this trial very successfully? Xiao Yan looked towards Xiao Zhen. The young girl's face revealed a faint smile. Finally completed successfully. Xiao Yan looked at her silently. Xiao Zhener smiled. What is it, brother Xiao Yan? Ever since I left Wuzhou City with Master, I have been looking forward to this day. Xiao Yan said softly. Now this day has finally come. Following the growth of age and experience, the current Xiao Yan is still as bold and brave as before. Compared to when he was young, he is already much steadier. But Xiao Yan is still Xiao Yan. His current tone is calm and low, only the emotions contained within are still burning hot. Xiao Zhener lightly smiled and generously held Xiao Yan's hand. Their fingers were tightly intertwined. The girl said softly, Yes, this day will definitely come. And now it has finally come. The two looked at each other and smiled. There was no need to say anything else. Silently walking for a while, Xiao Zhen suddenly woke up. She turned around and looked at Xiao Yan. Brother Xiao Yan, do you still remember that I was fostered in your home when I was a child? Hearing that, Xiao Yan didn't hurry to reply and instead glanced at Gu Qing in front of him. Although the two of them were communicating through consciousness, and Gu Qing wouldn't specially come to eavesdrop, Xiao Yan still had to do his best to avoid making things difficult for Xiao Zhen. Xiao Zhener nodded. Not only Uncle Cheng, father and mother also know. Grandpa only said that a powerful figure fostered you there. He was so powerful that he could crush our Xiao family with one finger. So he treated you well and didn't dare to ask about your background. Xiao Yan didn't say anything more. Silently he looked at Xiao Zhener. Looking back, it was incredible that Xiao Zhener grew up in Wuzhou City's Xiao family. Because the difference between the two was too big, like heaven and earth. When I was born, I actually had some illness. It was very special. Even father, Uncle Cheng, and ninth great-uncle felt it was troublesome. Xiao Zhener said softly. It was mainly because I was too young. If I was an adult, Father and the others could also cure me. But I was just born, just a baby. If I wasn't careful, I would lose my life. Xiaoyan didn't say anything. He knew that Xiaozhen hadn't finished. With the cultivation of Gu Jun, Gu Yuankai, and Gu Cheng, even if the patient was a baby, as long as it wasn't a fatal illness, they should be able to bring him back to life. After all, the ancient emperor's bloodline was very proficient in the art of alchemy. What Xiaozhen was going to say next should be the main point. As expected, Xiaozhen's expression became more serious. She continued, "The root of my illness lies in a piece of gravel collected by the family." She looked at Xiaoyan. That gravel was obtained by the immortal ancestor after he killed the king of the underworld. It was also what the king of the underworld really wanted from the immortal ancient world after he was reborn. The immortal ancestor Xiaozhen mentioned was the ancient emperor of the ancient era. His real name was Gu Changsheng. Before he became the human emperor, he was called the immortal Dao Lord, and some people called him the immortal emperor. At first, there was nothing strange. Even the immortal ancestor could only see that the gravel was related to the nether ocean. Xiaozhen continued. Then the immortal ancestor was killed by the ruthless bandits. The ancient race was also massacred. A large number of people were sacrificed, and the earliest immortal city that the immortal ancestor built was destroyed. That was why a few of the ancestors hid in the void battlefield and escaped the pursuit of the ruthless bandits. After that, we came to the immortal ancient world and built the immortal city again. But the gravel was still in our hands. In the long years after that, the gravel was unremarkable. There was nothing special about it. Until the middle era of the vast thousand worlds, the gravel suddenly changed. It was filled with evil qi, as if it was connected to the nether ocean. But it was not actually connected, only the aura could be felt. Until now, it was still the same. Xiaozhen frowned. After I became Yuanshen, my father allowed me to take a closer look. The aura was extremely evil, as if the world was filled with calamities, like the end of the world. Mother came into contact with the gravel when she was pregnant with me. She didn't feel anything at the time, but after giving birth to me, she found out that it was affecting me. Xiaoyan's pupils shrank. Zhen did you just say the middle era? Chapter 1070. Middle Era. Xiaoyan's heart moved slightly, looking at Xiaozhen. Xiaozhen nodded. According to the time, it should be during the war between the two worlds when Jihuang Xinyuan was killed. Hearing this, Xiaoyan was silent. Xiaozhen looked at him strangely, but did not ask more, continuing. Later, in order to treat me, Father used a clone to bring me into the divine land to find a solution. One day when I passed by Wuxia city, I suddenly discovered a strange aura circulating in a family in the city. It was so faint that it was almost undetectable, but it had the effect of treating my congenital chronic illness. After Father searched everywhere, he found the Xiao family, but he was unable to determine where the strange aura came from. That wasn't the aura of magic power, nor was it some trace left behind by some expert. If it wasn't for the strange illness in my body, even Father wouldn't have discovered it. Xiaozhen recalled and said, Father originally had the intention of simply bringing your entire family back to the ancient world of immortals, but thinking that I couldn't be in the ancient world of immortals at the same time as that shattered stone, and that the shattered stone was very strange, it couldn't easily leave the ancient world. In addition, he wanted to give me a normal and relaxed childhood, so he left me in the Xiao family in the end. On one hand, I wanted to treat my chronic illness, on the other, I also wanted to investigate the source of that strange aura. It's just that even though my illness was cured later on, I still didn't understand the source of that strange aura. Brother Xiaoyan, after you left to learn from Elder Lin, Father came to Wuxia city to find me again, but to no avail. He even took out the heavenly disaster remnant stone, but to no avail. My body was already cured, and I no longer feared the heavenly disaster remnant stone. So I followed Father back to the ancient world, and officially started cultivating. Xiaoyan, who was in deep thought, came back to his senses. Heavenly disaster. Xiaozhen said. When the middle era had just changed, that remnant stone once shot out a heart-palpitating red light. showing the two words heavenly disaster. After a short pause, Xiao Zhen'er continued. Then when I saw Brother Xiaoyan, your evil radiant overlord sword could break the crack in the nether sea, I had a guess. The source of that aura back then perhaps didn't originate from the Xiao family, but from you, big brother Xiaoyan. So after you left Wuzhou later, even if father brought the remnant stone of heavenly calamity over, he also couldn't find the slightest trace. When this news spread, father and the others also had the same guess, but they were never able to confirm it. Xiaoyan said softly, all these years, your father has been tacitly approving of our affairs. He has become more and more indulgent, almost to the point of letting us do whatever we want. Is it also related to this matter? He had never doubted Xiao Zhen'er's feelings, and there was no need for him to doubt it. However, it was hard to tell what his father-in-law was thinking. That's not the case. Xiao Zhen'er shook her head and looked at Xiaoyan. Brother Xiaoyan, do you remember that I once mentioned to you that 3 years ago in the vast thousand worlds, the great elder of Taishu Temple, Wu Mingqi, once visited our race's ancient longevity world? Xiaoyan nodded. That was the second person of Taishu Temple's great elder level to visit your place after Kai Fengzhou visited the ancient longevity world after the exterminating Xian War. Xiao Zhen'er said word by word. He can cause the remnant stone of heavenly calamity to resonate. On his body, there is the same fluctuation of the nether sea as the one in Wuzhou City. He once proposed to study the remnant stone of heavenly calamity together with our race and share the harvest, but father refused in the end. Xiaoyan was a bit surprised and looked at Xiao Zhen'er. A faint blush appeared on Xiao Zhen'er's face, but she did not continue speaking. She thought of the scene when she asked her father about it. Gu Jun's expression was kind as he smiled. Silly daughter, that is the dowry I prepared for you. It doesn't seem very expensive now, but I believe it is the most suitable thing. Xiao Zhen was a bit surprised. Father, you agree to my marriage with brother Xiaoyan? Gu Jun's expression was calm. After a long time he said softly, if possible, I sincerely hope that your marriage will not involve other factors, but being born in our race, this is very difficult to avoid. In these few years, Xiaoyan that child let me see his sincerity, and also saw the bearing of the Xian Gate's leader. I can see that they also don't wish for other matters to be involved in your marriage. This is very good, but there are a lot of things that can't be done with just our wishful thinking. Even if both of us want to help you two be together, in the eyes of the outside world, it will still be interpreted differently. Gu Jun lightly stroked Xiao Zhen'er's hair. As a father, I agree to your marriage. Xiao Yan is a partner that can be entrusted. A partner that is worth accompanying for a lifetime. But as the emperor of a dynasty, the leader of a clan, I still need to be cautious. One thing I can promise is that I will not choose other people for you to marry. However, you may have to wait. Xiao Zhen'er heard this and nodded. Father, I understand. I will not make things difficult for you, but no matter how long it takes, I will always wait. Gu Jun faintly smiled. Silly daughter, the matter might not be as bad as you think. Father will not interfere or obstruct your interaction with Xiao Yan. Even if the two of you dual cultivate, as long as the matter is not spread out, it's nothing. But before everything is settled, Father is unable to give you his blessings, and is unable to personally send you off. Father. Xiao Zhen'er blushed at first, but when she heard Gu Jun's words, she also felt sad. I am sorry, Father, I have made things difficult for you. It is not difficult, it is not difficult at all. On the contrary, I am very happy. Gu Jun sighed and looked at the void outside the palace. The life of us cultivators is too long. The reason why we become cultivation partners is to support each other on the path of cultivation. It is a union of sincere love. Perhaps only people like you and Xiao Yan, who have feelings for each other since they were young, can have a chance of success. Xiao Zhen'er suddenly smiled. Just like you and mother. Gu Jun also smiled. His smile was warm and genial. You. Thinking of the conversation she had with her father back then, Xiao Zhen'er's heart was both sweet and a bit bitter. She braced herself and looked at Xiao Yan. Brother Xiao Yan, father might also bring you to come in contact with the Heaven Calamity Remnant Rock this time. Xiao Yan lowered his head and pondered. After a while, he turned around and looked at Xiaozhen. In his eyes, there was suddenly a myriad of phenomena and endless disasters. At this moment, looking into Xiao Yan's eyes, Xiaozhen felt like she was looking at the netherworld ocean. Xiaozhen was shocked. Brother Xiao Yan, your eyes are the same as Elder Wu of Taishu Temple. They can both show the image of the netherworld ocean. In the netherworld ocean, there might be a line that connects me, your family's heavenly affliction rock, the supreme elder of Taishu Temple, and the king of the underworld. Xiao Yan said calmly. Xiao Zhen's eyes moved, as if she suddenly thought of something. She looked at Xiao Yan in shock. In the Middle Era, the person who activated the netherworld ocean and killed Jihuang Xinyuan with the Haotian mirror, was it really Wen Qiang? He didn't die and lived in the netherworld ocean until the Middle Era? Brother Xiao Yan, you and him. Xiao Yan shook his head and said, there might be a connection, but it shouldn't be a very close connection. I don't know the details, but the connection is real. The broken rock that your family got from the king of the underworld could very well be the result of the king of the underworld's research on the netherworld ocean when he was still in power. In the ancient war, when Qiang disappeared from the world, and his body was never found, the king of the underworld could very well have found some clues about Wen Qiang's whereabouts, and these clues point to the netherworld ocean. Xiao Yan twitched his mouth and said, after all, after the Taishu Taoist and Gautama Buddha went to the Dead Sea and disappeared, Wen Qiang became the person that the king of the underworld feared the most. He was still alive, and even though he was stronger than Xia Huang, he was still as obedient as a sheep. He only dared to show himself when Wen Qiang was gone. How could the king of the underworld feel at ease when such a person's life and death became a mystery? But it seems that before his research had much results, he was overthrown and deposed by your family's ancestor and the Taishu Temple, and was beaten to death once. Xiao Yan said in a low voice, there is also a possibility that Wen Qiang was in the netherworld sea, and it was only during the war between the two worlds in the Middle Era that he gained control of the netherworld sea, and it just so happened that he had a great battle with Jihuang Xinyuan. After that, Wen Qiang was completely destroyed, and he died together with Jihuang Xinyuan. But when the king of the underworld was hiding in the dark, waiting for his resurrection, and plotting, his understanding of the netherworld sea also deepened. That was why he could break open the crack in the netherworld sea, and disturb your ancient longevity world. And the Taishu Temple believed that they also tried to find out the truth behind Wen Qiang's disappearance in the ancient era, or maybe because of Wen Qiang's legacy, they also had some understanding of the netherworld sea. At this point, Xiao Yan laughed bitterly. The only problem that I still don't understand is myself. Xiao Zhen said, maybe after coming into contact with the Heaven Disaster Stone, Big Brother Xiao Yan, you might know more. The group walked and settled down under the guidance of Gu Cheng and the others. Although Gu Jun said that everyone had their own way of doing things in Longevity City, Xianmen Tianzong, and the others naturally would not be so rude. Even if they wanted to go out, they would ask the people of the ancient clan to accompany them. But most people still chose to rest in their rooms, and at most, they would visit each other's houses. At this moment, Duan Muhong was in Master Tang Jun's room, and he asked curiously, Master, when do you think those ancient clan people who are looking for trouble with us will come? Tang Jun frowned slightly. Why would there be ancient clan people looking for trouble with us? Which one of you is in trouble? No, Master. When you were chatting with Grandmaster in the past, you said that if Grandmaster comes to propose marriage, there will definitely be one or a few clan brothers who have always been secretly in love with the ancient clan princess, Dao venerate Qing Yi, and think that they are very powerful to provoke Grandmaster and look for trouble with him. As Duan Muhong spoke, he gestured with his hands. Moreover, there will be elders from the ancient clan jumping out to look at Grandmaster and obstruct the marriage between Grandmaster and Dao venerate Qing Yi. They will even say things like how a toad wants to eat swan meat. The more Tang Jun listened, the weirder his expression became. In another quiet room, Lin Feng and Xiao Yan sat opposite each other, staring at each other. After a long while, Lin Feng held his forehead weakly. Brat, what exactly have you taught your disciples? Chapter 1071. Lin Feng and Xiao Yin naturally wouldn't be so bored as to eavesdrop on the conversation between their juniors. However, with their divine senses spread out, the conversation between Tang Jun and Duan Muhang naturally fell into their ears. Other words were like the wind that blew past without leaving a trace. It wouldn't attract the attention of Lin Feng and Duan Muhang at all. But once the words, "the aboriginals are looking for trouble," entered their ears, Lin Feng and Duan Muhang were naturally more attentive as seniors. However, after hearing Duan Muhang's words clearly, Lin Feng was instantly speechless. He looked at Xiao Yin and said, "Aren't these the words Master used to joke with you? Did you tell them?" Xiao Yin also didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I only told Tiansong, treating it as a joke." Just like the relationship between Lin Feng and Xiao Yin, the master-disciple relationship between Xiao Yin and Tang Jun was also very relaxed. They often joked and teased each other. Who knew that little Duan Muhang, who was at the side, would firmly remember it in his heart and treat it seriously. At this moment, Tang Jun looked at Duan Muhang's serious and somewhat worried gaze. For a moment, he also had the urge to look up at the sky and cry against the wind. He had always been unyielding towards outsiders, but towards his own people, he never had a temper, especially when Duan Muhang was his personal disciple. At this moment he could only smile bitterly and say, "That was a joke between Grandmaster and Master. Duanmu, don't take it seriously." Fake. Duan Muhang blinked his eyes, instantly confused. Tang Jun sighed. Dao Venerate Qingye is peerless in her generation, like a banished immortal. There are probably many people who secretly admire her. This is true, but no one would go and challenge your Grandmaster. Your Grandmaster's magical powers are astonishing. Back then, when he first formed his primordial soul, he was already able to fight against experts of the path integration realm. This isn't us bragging, it's your Grandmaster's actual battle achievements. There are quite a few people who know about this. This matter isn't a secret, and it's very easy to verify. When your Grandmaster came to propose marriage, how could the people of the ancient immortals realm not investigate the most basic things? Putting aside the fact that there might not be anyone in the ancient immortals world who dares to challenge your Grandmaster. Even if there is an expert in the younger generation who can challenge your Grandmaster, he definitely wouldn't foolishly come to find trouble. Duan Muhang blinked his eyes. Why? Tang Jun extended his thumb and pointed at the room behind him. Because this time, it is not your Grandmaster who has come to visit. Rather, it is your great-grandmaster who has personally come to visit the ancient longevity plane. Our sect is the one who has come to visit the ancient longevity plane. Before coming here, we had already informed each other. To be honest, if your Grandmaster is a lone cultivator, and if the experts of the ancient immortals world come to propose marriage without knowing his background, then the previous joke might become reality. But in this situation, it's really just a joke. As for the elders of the ancient immortals world opposing the marriage between your Grandmaster and Dao Venerate Qingye, I'm afraid that will happen, but it's not because of a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. It involves a higher level, and it's no longer just a matter of marriage. As for the elders of the ancient immortals world opposing the marriage between your Grandmaster and Dao Venerate Qingye, I'm afraid that will happen, but it's not because of a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. It involves a higher level, and it's no longer just a matter of marriage. As the first seat true disciple of Xiaoyan, Tang Jun, who was now a Yuanian cultivator, would naturally come into contact with more and more information of a higher level. But even so, it's a matter of private communication within the ancient immortals world. It won't be brought to the surface and openly cause trouble for your Grandmaster. After Tang Jun finished speaking, Duan Muhang asked, not really understanding, why? Tang Jun's tone was indifferent. Because our master is Xianmin Tianzong, and because your great-grandmaster is the master of the Taoist sect, and your Grandmaster is the head elder of our sect. There are only 3 circumstances in which your Grandmaster's marriage proposal could cause the ancient immortals to retaliate violently. Tang Jun raised 3 fingers at Duan Muhang and said calmly, First, we have a feud with the ancient immortals. Second, if Dao Venerate Qingye isn't willing, your Grandmaster wants to take her as his wife. Third, us juniors in the ancient world of immortals have caused a great disaster. A great disaster that would immediately cause both sides to have a blood feud. As long as it's not these three circumstances, even if the ancient emperor of the ancient world of immortals joins our opposing side, our visit this time will at most be tactfully rejected. There won't be any unpleasantness on the surface. He patted Duan Muhang's little head. Of these three circumstances, which do you think is close to it? Duan Muhang shook his head. None of them are close to it. It's the third. Disciples and brothers, you have to be careful. He thought for a moment and said, but we can't be reckless. They can also use a formal challenge or ask for advice to find Grandmaster. Tang Jun smiled. That's right, they are worth teaching. They can, but it won't be today, because they have already done so. This is the first time your Grandmaster has come to the ancient world of immortals. Your Grandmaster isn't, and neither am I. The few elders of the Gu clan have secretly probed your Grandmaster many times. It's just that they all came in high spirits and returned in disappointment. Even the rising talents of the ancient immortals in the Yuanying stage, I have fought with them more than once or twice. Duan Muhang's interest was instantly piqued. Master, did you win or lose? Tang Jun thought for a moment. I won all of them, but it's not like there aren't any experts in the younger generation of the ancient world of immortals. Dao Venerate Qingye's Jr. is called Gu Lianqing, and he's quite outstanding. Speaking up to here, Tang Jun rubbed his chin. Now that you mention it, I remember that Gu Lianqing said that he couldn't beat me in a fight of magical powers. The next time we meet, he wants to compete with me in alchemy. While Tang Jun and Duan Muhang were talking, Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan with a smile that wasn't a smile. Xiao Yan laughed awkwardly. Child's words carry no harm. Child's words carry no harm. Lin Feng used his finger to point at him. Jokes have to be made according to the situation and the person. When I told you those jokes, did I do it in front of Yuan Fang? Xiao Yan sighed. At this time, the door opened and Xiao Zhen walked in holding little Lin Tong's hand. Little Lin Tong's longing for Xiao Zhen was no less than Xiao Yan's. Once they arrived at the residence, she immediately occupied Xiao Zhen and chattered non-stop. When she saw Xiao Yan, the little girl giggled and said, Daddy, don't be angry. I will return mother to you now. It's godfather, not daddy, Xiao Yan said in a bad mood. Little Tong was getting older and more mature. She was very obedient in other things, but this was the only problem that Xiao Yan corrected countless times. She always turned a deaf ear to. Now Xiao Yan was a little numb. Fortunately, when there were outsiders around, little Lin Tong would be more restrained. Most of the time, she would call him master. Xiao Zhen and Lin Tong bowed towards Lin Feng together. Xiao Zhen said softly, Senior Lin, not even 2 hours after you entered the ancient realm, the head of the Taishu Temple, Yan Nanlai, brought along the Grand Elder Lord Qing Ning, the Grand Elder Wu Mengqi, the disciple of the head of Yan Temple, the current world wayfarer of Taoism, Lin Daohan, as well as a group of junior disciples to visit the ancient realm of longevity. Ninth Grand Uncle has already gone to welcome them. I believe they will arrive at Longevity City soon. Lin Feng smiled slightly. It's fine. I can roughly guess why they are here. When Yan Nanlai and his group came to visit, Gu Jun and the others of the ancient world also received them and arranged their accommodations. After a brief conversation, the people of Taishu Temple went to their accommodations to rest. Similarly, they would officially discuss matters the next day. On the second day, Gu Peng came to invite them. Lin Feng brought Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi Yangqing, and Li Yuanfang to the central main hall of the palace. The current ancient emperor Gu Jun, and the other two big shots of the ancient world of longevity, Gu Cheng and Gu Yuankai, were already waiting in the main hall. After the two sides greeted each other and sat down, Lin Feng smiled and said, Fellow Taoist Gu, my purpose for coming here has already been mentioned in our previous communication. This time, I have no other intentions. My eldest disciple, Xiao Yan, wants to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. His parents died when he was young and his grandfather is old, so I, as his master, have come to propose marriage on his behalf. I hope the three Taoists of the ancient world can forgive me for my lack of manners. Xiao Yan sat below him and did not say much. He left everything to Lin Feng. Xiaozhen, also sat silently on the opposite seat. After looking at Xiao Yan and Xiaozhen, Lin Feng continued. By coincidence, my eldest disciple and your daughter grew up together. They were childhood sweethearts, and after they grew up, they fell in love with each other. Now they have both become primordial divinities and live as long as the heavens. In the future, they will support each other and live together. This is also a beautiful story. Gu Jun said. Master of Xianmen is too polite. Your daughter is much better than my daughter. Gu Qing didn't say anything. Slowly, Gu Yuankai said. Both of them have become primordial divinities and have a stable foundation. But they are still young. For mortals, they are not young, but for us cultivators, they have just stepped on the path of human growth. It is naturally a good thing that they love each other. But the years are long, so they should spend more time together. After the accumulation of time, it will be beneficial for them to help each other in the future. He turned around and looked at Xiaozhen kindly. He smiled and said, Zhen, don't blame me. It's just that we need to spend a long time together, not a fiery passion. It's not that I don't think highly of you and Xiao Yan. I just hope that you can go further and smoother in the future. When a cultivator's age reached a certain point, their age was no longer the same as that of mortals. There was no limit to their lifespan. When a cultivator was immersed in cultivation, they might spend a few months, a few years, a few decades, or even hundreds or thousands of years. Whether a person's mind was mature or not depended on the increase of experience and knowledge, not purely on the increase of age. From the perspective of the growth of experience and emotional intelligence, there was not much difference between a person cultivating in seclusion for 50 years and sleeping for 50 years. So, it was not wrong to say that Xiao Yan and Xiaozhen were young. But Gu Yuankai's words were just a facade. Chapter 1072. The meaning of Gu Yuankai's words was actually implicitly expressing that Xianmen Tianzong's rise was too short. Although he was already extremely powerful, there were still many things that needed time to verify. Hearing Gu Yuankai's words, Lin Feng was not angry. He looked at Gu Jun with a slight smile. What does fellow Taoist Gu think? Gu Jun's expression was calm. Slowly he said, the growth of one's experience lies in how many things one has experienced, not just the length of time. Gu Yuankai frowned slightly and did not say anything. Gu Qing also did not speak. Gu Jun looked at Lin Feng. However, my daughter is stubborn and mischievous. She may cause trouble for your sect. Your daughter is outstanding, so there are many people who yearn for her. This is human nature. Lin Feng smiled. He opened his palm and a stream of light flew out, floating in front of Gu Jun and the other two. It was a piece of paper that flickered with a faint radiance. There were some words written on the paper. Gu Jun and the other two were somewhat stunned at first, but when they saw the contents of the paper, their pupils shrank slightly. Gu Jun and Gu Qing looked at Gu Yuankai. Gu Yuankai did not move. He stared at the words on the paper for a long time, calculating and deducing in his heart. After a while, he turned his head and nodded at Gu Jun and Gu Qing. Sect leader Lin, this pill formula. Gu Jun turned to look at Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled slightly. It was an accidental gain. I deduced it. Fellow Taoists, you are all great alchemists. Please correct me. Gu Jun asked slowly. Sect leader Lin, did you just say that it was deduced? You did not obtain a ready-made pill formula? Gu Yuankai and Gu Qing also trembled slightly, their eyes fixed on Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression did not change at all. He smiled and nodded. I have made a fool of myself in front of you. Gu Jun's expression did not relax. Instead, it became much more solemn. We trust sect leader Lin's words. But since it is so, we must ask one more thing. Sect leader Lin, what is your intention in deducing this pill formula? Lin Feng didn't think much of Gu Jun's question because it was a normal reaction. If he was in Gu Jun's position, he would have the same thought. I don't have any special intentions. It's just that the effects of this Dan are quite good. I like it, so I derived this recipe for future use. It's that simple. Lin Feng said indifferently. To me, it's just a pill recipe, a type of pill. It doesn't affect the overall situation at all. Today, I'm showing the pill recipe to the three fellow Taoists. Firstly, I hope that the three great alchemists can correct me. Secondly, it's my first time visiting your esteemed place. It's just a small greeting gift. The three fellow Taoists don't need to worry too much. Gu Jun and the other two fell silent at the same time. Lin Feng's tone was calm, but it revealed a convincing aura. The so-called meeting gift was literally what it meant. In other words, this pill recipe that had a great origin and could shake the entire divine land was not counted by Lin Feng as a betrothal gift to Xiao Yan. In the hands of the Gu race, this pill recipe had a special meaning and function that exceeded the value of the recipe itself. The three leaders of the Gu race began to communicate with their consciousness. After a long time, they finally calmed down. Lin Feng and the others were not in a hurry. Silently, they sat in the hall and waited. Sect leader Lin, you're exaggerating. If that's the case, then our race and I are being too impolite. Gu Jun shook his head slowly and glanced at Gu Yuankai. After a moment of silence, Gu Yuankai put away the recipe in front of him. At this point in the conversation, the direction of the conversation suddenly changed. Whether it was Lin Feng or Gu Jun, they no longer talked about the marriage between Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen. Instead, they chatted about cultivation techniques and ancient and modern stories. The atmosphere of the conversation suddenly relaxed. Xiao Zhen and Xiao Yan looked at each other. There was no ecstasy in their eyes, but they both let out a sigh of relief. At this point, the marriage was not really set, but the possibility of it being rejected had been completely cut off. The only suspense was when and under what circumstances the matter would be completely settled. Gu Jun looked at Lin Feng. Sect leader Lin, Taishu Temple's Yen Monastery master has come to visit. I haven't talked to him in detail. However, during our short conversation yesterday he mentioned something. What he meant was that our three families should sit down and talk together. Xianmen Tianzong came first. Unless Gu Jun had already made up his mind to go to Taishu Temple, he would naturally meet Xianmen Tianzong and the others first. Lin Feng nodded calmly. I have a general idea of Monastery Master Yan's intentions. If fellow Gu doesn't mind, then I have no objections. Let's talk later. He stood up. My disciples and I will return to our residence first. After fellow Gu and the others from Taishu Temple have talked, our three families will meet again. Unless the aboriginals completely went to Xianmen Tianzong, it was impossible for them to invite the people from Taishu Temple over when Lin Feng and the others were present. That would be equivalent to the two families working together, and Taishu Temple would be the guests. Lin Feng didn't want to make things difficult for Gu Jun, so he took the initiative to leave. Although Lin Feng was used to the power of unity, he had never been interested in things like marriage alliances. The result of the previous conversation was enough to satisfy Lin Feng. He didn't care about the marriage between Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen, or because he wanted to rope in the aboriginals. On the contrary, it was precisely because of the marriage between Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen, or that he wasn't so enthusiastic about winning over the aboriginals. He personally came to the ancient immortals world to prevent some blind people from messing up his eldest disciple's marriage. Winning over the aboriginals was more to prevent Xiao Yan and Xiao Zhen, or from being stuck in the middle if something happened in the future. Although he would calmly weigh the pros and cons most of the time, Lin Feng would sometimes be capricious and emotional when it came to a specific matter that involved certain people. However, he didn't plan to change himself just because of this. After Lin Feng and the others returned to their residence, they received another invitation from Gu Jun and the others the next day. Once again, they went to the central hall. This time, the three parties, Xianmen Tianzong, the ancient immortals world, and Taishu Temple, would meet and talk. Seeing Yan Nanlai again, Lin Feng exchanged a glance with him. The two nodded in greeting. Slowly Yan Nanlai said, Sect leader Lin, how have you been? It's been a long time. Lin Feng smiled. Leader Yan, it's been a long time too. Yan Nanlai had a head of long black hair, but his temples were as white as snow. He looked to be in his 20s or 30s, and his expression was calm and indifferent. On either side of him, one on the left and one on the right, was a spirited young man with a hint of arrogance and a calm but slightly serious old man. The former was the leader of the radical faction of Taishu Temple, Wu Mingqi and the other leader, Kai Fengzhou. They were all descendants of Wen Qiang, the head of the Great Void Four. Wu Mingqi was the person in Taishu Temple who could break open the crack in the Netherworld Sea and draw upon the power of the Netherworld Sea. When he opened his eyes, he could vaguely see thousands of calamities appearing in the Netherworld Sea, as if it was the end of the world. He first looked at Lin Feng, then slowly moved to Xiaoyan. And the other old man is the conservative elder of the Void Temple, Dao Lord Qingning. He is also the #1 alchemist of the Void Temple, and at the same time is also known by many as the current #1 alchemist of the human cultivation world in the entire Divine Continent. Wu Mingqi and Lord Qingning were both members of Taishu Temple's Supreme Elders Guild. Beside the young Lord Qingning was a young man dressed in green. His appearance gave people a very contradictory feeling. His facial features looked unusually ordinary, but he gave people a strange feeling of handsomeness that was unforgettable. As time passed, people felt that the ordinariness of his body was constantly fading away, and his whole person became more and more handsome. He was like a fine jade that had been broken for many years, and finally the outer layer of stone was gradually peeling off, revealing its original appearance. When Lin Feng saw him, he nodded and said, "Your cultivation is getting more profound." The young man cupped his hands and bowed to Lin Feng. "Master of Celestial Sect is too kind. I don't deserve it." This young man was the Taishu Temple's current Empyrean wayfarer, Lin Daohan. As for what Gu Jun and the other two had discussed with the people of Taishu Temple after they left yesterday, Lin Feng and his disciple naturally did not know. Whether it was the expressions of Gu Jun and the other two or the people of Taishu Temple, they did not reveal any clues. However, Lin Feng could still vaguely feel that Gu Jun and the other two's perception of him seemed to have changed a little. This was not because they had found any real clues, but purely because of the subtle perception of their spiritual consciousness. It was very mysterious. As one of Lin Feng's disciples, Zhu Yi, who had the most agile spirit and the strongest spiritual perception, also frowned secretly, sensing something different. "Fellow Gu, tell me that Master of Yen Temple has something that he hopes the three of us can discuss together?" Lin Feng's face did not show the slightest hint of emotion. Although he still did not know what kind of medicine Taishu Temple had given him, it did not affect him much at the moment. He could feel that Gu Jun and the others did not have a change of heart. It was just that they had some doubts in their hearts. Hearing Lin Feng's question, Gu Jun did not say much. His gaze also turned to Yan Nanlai. Yan Nanlai nodded. "What I want to talk about is about a person. He is related to Xianmen Tianzong, the ancient immortals world, and my temple. He is also related to the entire human cultivation world in the Divine Land. This person is the resurrected king of the underworld, who has returned to the world in the current era." Hearing the name of the king of the underworld, Lin Feng and Gu Jun nodded together. "He is indeed related to all three of us." Silently, Yan Nanlai said, "If the king of the underworld is not eliminated, he is a huge hidden danger to the entire Divine Land, especially at a crucial time in the war between the two worlds. If he suddenly acts up, it is very likely that it will cause irreversible consequences." Lin Feng looked at Yan Nanlai. "Do you know his exact whereabouts?" Yan Nanlai shook his head slowly. "His exact whereabouts are uncertain, but it is certain that his whereabouts are related to the Underworld Sea. The disciples of the King of the Underworld have all hidden themselves very well. However, among them, the most mysterious one, Yuming Daoist, seems to have been hiding in the Underworld Sea all these years, planning for the King of the Underworld." Gu Jun frowned slightly. "I believe that Yuming Daoist has the ability to enter the Underworld Sea. However, if he has been hiding in the Underworld Sea all this time, how did he do it? Calamities and tribulations are everywhere in the Underworld Sea. If he is always in the Underworld Sea, not to mention whether he can resist it, even if he can, all his energy will be used to resist the power of the Underworld Sea. I'm afraid he will not have the time to do anything else, unless Yuming Daoist's strength far exceeds our expectations." Lin Feng lightly tapped his fingers on the armrest of his chair. Shaking his head, he said, "I'm afraid there is another key." Chapter 1073. Lin Feng and Gu Jun looked at Yin Nanlai, as well as Wu Mingqi beside him. Yin Nanlai also turned to look at Wu Mingqi, nodding slightly. Wu Mingqi said, "Within the Netherworld Sea, it is very possible that there are some worlds within worlds, some smaller worlds that are contained within the Netherworld Sea." "That explains it." Gu Jun nodded, then said, "However, the formation of worlds within worlds is usually the result of special external forces, and not the natural formation of the original world." Lin Feng looked at Wu Mingqi. "Fellow Taoist Wu, can you enter these worlds within worlds?" Wu Mingqi was silent for a moment, then answered, "I can't enter, I can only sense their existence." Yin Nanlai said, "The spatial boundaries of the Netherworld Sea are not as chaotic as the empty sea, but the situation within is more complicated, and it is more difficult to find out." Lin Feng and Gu Jun both understood what he meant. They had a general understanding of the Netherworld Sea. It seems that Taishu Temple's exploration of the Netherworld Sea is still a step behind the king of the underworld. Lin Feng and Xiaoyan looked at each other, both understanding. In the ancient era, they may have also diligently searched for Wen Qiang's whereabouts, but the direction of their exploration was deviated, and their focus was not on the Netherworld Sea. Our current understanding of the Netherworld Sea is most likely from Wen Qiang's legacy after the war between the two worlds in the Middle Era. Gu Jun pondered, suddenly his eyes flashed, and he raised his head to look at Lin Feng and Yin Nanlai. "Please forgive me, something has happened in our clan, and we need to deal with it first. We will discuss the matter of the king of the underworld tomorrow, what do you think?" Lin Feng and Yin Nanlai nodded. "Fellow Taoist Gu is too polite, please go ahead." Xianmen Tianzong and Taishu Temple were led back to their residences by Gu Qing and Gu Yuankai. After they left, Gu Jun's gaze became more serious, and his figure disappeared from the main hall. When he reappeared, he was already in a side hall, where Gu Peng was waiting. "The heavenly affliction rock suddenly moved?" Gu Jun asked in a deep voice. Gu Peng nodded his head. "Yes, it was only for a short moment, but the abnormality was quite intense. It felt like there was a change in the Netherworld Sea." Gu Jun arrived at the palace where the ancient longevity plane stone of heavenly calamity was stored. There, within the sealed world of magic power, a stone fragment hovered in the air, flashing with a red luster. It gave off a feeling of endless calamity, an ominous feeling. Gu Jun did not stare at the broken stone. Instead, he raised his head and looked at the ceiling of the palace. After a long time he slowly said, "Let Zhener bring that child Xiaoyan here." Gu Peng asked, "Then the master of the celestial sect of wonders?" Gu Jun said, "Naturally, there's no need to hide it. If sect master Lin knows, he probably won't come with us." After receiving the invitation, Lin Feng looked at Xiaoyan and said with a smile, "You can go with Miss Zhen, or I won't be going." "Yes, master." After pondering for a moment, Xiaoyan nodded his head and bowed to Lin Feng together with Xiaozhen. Before leaving the room, Lin Feng's fingers lightly tapped the armrest of the chair as he pondered. The Netherworld Sea has formed a world within a world, and there might be more than one. Are all of these worlds within a world under the control of the king of the underworld and Taoist Yu Ming, or only a portion? Xiaoyan followed Xiaozhen, to the palace where the heavenly calamity rock was stored. Gu Jun and Gu Peng were waiting there. Xiaoyan looked at the stone fragment hovering in the air, and his eyes narrowed. After greeting Gu Jun and Gu Peng, Xiaoyan came before the sealed world of magic power. Gu Jun said, "The sealed world will not be lifted. You will need to enter by yourself." Xiaoyan nodded his head and immediately stepped in. As soon as he stepped into the sealed world, Xiaoyan's body stiffened slightly as he stared at the heavenly calamity rock, unable to move his eyes away. The heavenly calamity rock shot out a dazzling red light that condensed into the word, "Heavenly Calamity," in the void. It made people's hearts palpitate, as if it was a true calamity of the world. Xiaoyan stared at the heavenly calamity rock, his eyes flashing with light. He reached out his palm, and the evil glory overlord sword was already in his hand. A blood-red crack appeared on the door-like broad body of the sword. It was as if a sleeping demon god had awakened and opened its eyes. In those eyes, the Netherworld Sea's calamities and tribulations kept surging as if they were about to gush out. However, Xiaoyan did not lose his mind. He used his own power to control the crack on the evil glory overlord sword to not continue expanding, even maintaining it in a relatively stable state. Even the vicious calamities and tribulations were suppressed and could not come out. However, the crack on the netherworld sea was clearly resonating with the heavenly calamity rock at this moment. Both of them hummed and trembled. Xiaoyan directly manifested his primordial spirit, which transformed into a huge Tai Chi diagram that was completely formed by flames of various colors. As the Tai Chi diagram revolved, rays of red light started to gush out from it, and together transformed into a crimson-red pillar of light. It had the same aura as the heavenly calamity rock, filled with calamity and inauspiciousness. As for the aura of calamity of the heavenly calamity rock, it gradually calmed down and regained its calm. The red light that shot out from the word, heavenly calamity, also gradually disappeared. After a long time, the flaming Tai Chi diagram manifested by Xiaoyan's primordial spirit recovered its human form. Xiaoyan closed his eyes with a calm expression. He sat cross-legged in front of the heavenly calamity rock, and formed a strange seal with his hands. Upon seeing this, Gu Peng frowned slightly and looked at Gu Jun. Imperial brother, this seal is very strange. I can't tell its origin at all. It doesn't seem like any orthodoxy in the divine land that has something to do with it. It is also different from the Xianmen Tianzong's direct line of inheritance. However, Xianmen Tianzong's orthodoxy is mysterious. I can't be sure, Gu Jun said. Just from what we know, it is indeed different. He paused for a moment and then said, Xianmen Tianzong's orthodoxy divine ability is indeed mysterious. As Gu Jun spoke, his gaze turned to Gu Peng and Xiaozhen. Yesterday, when I was talking with the head of the Taishu Temple, Yin Nanlai, he mentioned something. The orthodoxy divine ability of the Xianmen sect's master actually fused the human race's cultivation method with the demon race's cultivation method. Gu Peng and Xiaozhen were both stunned. How is that possible? Even though the demon race can cultivate Buddhism, it is not a fusion. Yin Nanlai would not easily lie about this kind of thing. Gu Jun looked at Xiaoyan, who was meditating with his eyes closed, and said softly, if he tried to lie about this kind of thing, then Yin Nanlai would not only have a problem with his character, but also with his intelligence. At the same time, it would be an insult to Gu Jun's intelligence. Gu Peng murmured, what is the Xianmen sect's master thinking about? Does he want to be the master of the divine land and infinite wasteland domain? I really don't know if this is madness or boldness. Gu Jun shook his head. I don't think so. Gu Peng and Xiaozhen looked at him curiously. Gu Jun pondered and said, the Xianmen sect's master has a grand plan, or rather, he is full of ambition. There is no doubt about this. But looking at his way of doing things, he is not an arrogant person. Although there are times when he does as he pleases, most of the time, he only acts after planning. I have a vague idea about what he is doing, but I just can't see it clearly. He came back to his senses and turned to Xiaozhen. He smiled and said, Zhen, don't worry. This will not affect your relationship with Xiaoyan. On the contrary, knowing this matter, although father has some doubts, but after thinking about it carefully, father is more optimistic about Xianmen Tianzong. Gu Peng and Xiaozhen were surprised to hear this. Xiaozhen looked at her father and said, Father? Gu Jun waved his hand. Let's wait and see. It is still too early to say. Among the high-level experts of the ancient immortal world, Gu Peng and Gu Cheng were more inclined toward Xianmen Tianzong. Hearing this, he laughed and shook his head. The Yen Temple Master and the others of the Taishu Temple probably did not expect that their persuasion would have the opposite effect. Gu Jun said, it is not that they did not expect it. They are just not sure, so they tried. Looking at this matter from different angles, the results will be completely different. People with different styles of doing things will also come up with different opinions. At this point, Gu Jun did not say anything more. He looked at Xiaoyan, who seemed to be meditating. Gu Peng and Xiaozhen also did not say anything. Their eyes fell on Xiaoyan. After a long time, Xiaoyan slowly opened his eyes. A red light flashed in his eyes. He stood up and came out of the sealed world. He came in front of Xiaozhen, and the other two and bowed to Gu Jun. Thank you, Senior Gu. Gu Jun smiled and shook his head. You two just complement each other. I have also studied this heavenly calamity stone for a long time, but I did not find anything. Today, seeing the resonance between you and it, I know that this item is destined to belong to you. Although Elder Wu of the Taishu Temple can open a crack in the netherworld sea on a large scale, this item is useless in his hands. He looked at Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan nodded his head lightly. Then a red light appeared in his eyes again. It was the same as the heavenly calamity stone. Within the red light, a large number of complicated runes appeared, ancient and mysterious. The red light still flashed, but Gu Jun had already clapped his hands and sighed. The world is full of phenomena. It is indeed too wonderful for words. Xiaoyan said regretfully. It is a pity that we cannot lock onto the position of the netherworld sea realm in a short period of time. And the war between the two realms may break out at any time. If we cannot take care of the king of the underworld as soon as possible, or at least heavily injure him, there will always be a hidden danger in the war between the two realms. Gu Jun said. We can plan for this slowly. Compared to before you entered this hall, we have already taken a big step forward. The group left the hall. Accompanied by Xiaozhen, Xiaoyan returned to where Xianmen Tianzong and the others were staying. On the way back, Xiaoyan and Xiaozhen, hearts suddenly jumped at the same time. They turned their heads to look in the other direction. That is the direction of the Black Spirit Hall. It is the place where our clan's juniors learn to make pills. Xiaozhen glanced and shook her head. I am afraid that group of brats are not satisfied with their loss. That is why they dragged Tiansong and the others to compete in pill making again. But, a smile appeared at the corner of Xiaoyan's mouth. But there are still juniors from the Taishu Temple. Interesting. Let's go, Zhen. Let's go have a look. Chapter 1074. In the imperial city of Longevity City, the Black Spiritual Palace was the place where the younger generation of the ancient clan learned alchemy. Because of the orthodoxy, almost all of the ancient clan disciples knew alchemy, and their average level was quite outstanding. The ancient clan disciples were in the Black Spiritual Palace when they were young, and there were elders who were in charge of teaching them. As their cultivation grew, their age grew, and their alchemy skills improved, these ancient clan disciples no longer came to the Black Spiritual Palace. Instead, they prepared their own cauldrons and practiced at home. However, the Black Spiritual Palace still prepared many high-quality cauldrons. Among them, there were ordinary cauldrons and cauldrons for the young disciples to practice, but there were also excellent treasures. There were even cauldrons at the level of Yuan spirit magic treasures. However, such treasures were naturally not something that the younger generation disciples could come into contact with on a daily basis. Xiaoyan and Xiaozhen entered the Black Spiritual Palace and saw that there was a rather large hall in the center of the hall. There were many seats around the hall, surrounding a platform in the center. On the platform, there was a huge purplish-red cauldron. This is the pill furnace that the elders of the Gu clan normally used to demonstrate and explain during lectures. Xiaoyan swept a glance and secretly nodded his head. Compared to the outer sky core furnace, it is only slightly inferior. Placed here, although it is impossible for it to be inferior, it is definitely not a treasure of the Gu clan. The power of tradition is indeed powerful. In this aspect, the ancient emperor's heritage is quite deep. He looked around and saw that at the edge of the large hall, there were doors on the wall. Each door represented a quiet room. Xiaoyan's nose twitched slightly. He knew that there was a small cauldron in each quiet room. It must be for the ancient clan disciples to practice. There was a fragrant medicinal fragrance coming from each quiet room. But there was also a pungent smell of burnt things. The two smelled even worse when they were mixed together. However, Xiaoyan smiled. When he first came into contact with alchemy, there was also a situation where a good cauldron of medicine was turned into waste. Under his Funtianya, most of the disciples in Xianmen Tianzong who were talented in the way of alchemy, or disciples who were passionate about alchemy, refining a batch of good pills and refining a batch of useless dregs also happened from time to time. Therefore, this kind of smell was something that Xiaoyan could not be more familiar with. They should be on the second floor. Xiao Zhener said. The third floor is where the cauldrons are, and the second floor is where most of the cultivators who have made some achievements in the art of alchemy in our clan use when they don't have a proper cauldron. There are better cauldrons than the one on the first floor. Xiaoyan smiled and said, Today, I can also follow them and broaden my horizons. Xiao Zhener rolled her eyes at him and said, You are guarding Ding of Shenzhou every day, so stop mocking me. Not to mention the cauldrons on the second floor and the cauldrons on the third floor. Even Huanggu Immortal is not as good as Ding of Shenzhou. Huanggu Immortal was the origin spirit of the Huanggu Immortal Cauldron, a Mahayana-level magic treasure owned by the ancient royal family. In terms of alchemy and alchemy, Huanggu Immortal Cauldron was comparable to the Sun-Moon Divine Cauldron of the Taishu Temple and the Yantian Divine Cauldron of the ancient Heavenly Gate. It was one of the best alchemy and alchemy treasures under Ding of Shenzhou. Only in front of her parents and Xiao Yin would Xiao Zhener show such a girly attitude. But towards this Xiao Yin can only bitterly laugh to himself. Xiao Zhen still doesn't know that he has been close to the Divine Continent Cauldron for many years, and it is only recently that he can barely use it. Wanting to perfectly combine his own pill refining skills with the magic treasure. Who knows how long he will have to wait. The two of them went up to the second floor and saw a group of people already standing there in a circle. However, the three groups of people were clearly separated and facing each other. Xiao Yin and Xiao Zhener's cultivation was much higher than theirs, so no one noticed them. It was as if they didn't exist. In the middle of the crowd was a dark green-colored four-legged small square cauldron. It looked normal, but Xiao Yin only needed to glance at it to be able to tell that it was a pill cauldron comparable to the outer sky core furnace. Inside the cauldron, there were waves of blue qi that had a special effect on stabilizing the medicinal power. It could greatly increase the success rate of alchemy and prevent the ingredients from being wasted. At this moment, the person standing in front of the cauldron was a handsome young man. Golden flames appeared on his hands, flickering with red and blue light. He freely added them to the dark green square cauldron. Xiao Zhener whispered to Xiao Yan, It's Lianqing. Xiao Yan nodded his head. He also knew this handsome young man. His name was Gu Lianqing, 1 generation younger than Xiao Zhener. He was the most outstanding young man in the younger generation after Xiao Zhener of the ancient king's bloodline. His talents were all very outstanding, and he was already a nascent soul cultivator. Back then, he fought with Tang Jun and lost to Tang Jun. This time it was time to compete in alchemy. Tang Jun stood in front of him and silently watched Gu Lianqing add waves of magic power to the cauldron. Moments later, Gu Lianqing shouted, Go! His palms slammed on the cauldron, and the blue qi inside the cauldron suddenly spread out. The fragrance of the medicine filled the air, and many wonderful scenes appeared above the cauldron and didn't disappear for a long time. Within the light, the many wondrous scenes gradually converged into a huge lotus flower, and then it bloomed layer by layer. Gu Lianqing revealed a satisfied expression. He waved his sleeve, and the light dissipated, revealing the cauldron below. Silently, there were 12 white pills inside. Xiao Yin gave it a glance and knew that it was a type of medicinal pill, known as the energy conversion pill. It is rather common in the entire Great Thousand Worlds, and is a medicinal pill used to assist in daily cultivation. Many families and powers have the pill recipe. The celestial sect of Xianmen and the ancient longevity world are the same. For most of the ancient race disciples here, this was the foundation of the foundation. When they first learned alchemy, they would come into contact with this pill, and there was no difficulty in making it. But the problem was that it would take an average nascent soul cultivator an entire day to refine this batch of pills. Naturally, Gu Lianqing couldn't make this pill for a day. In fact, before Xiao Yan went to the palace where the heavenly calamity stone was stored, Tang Jun and the other disciples of Xianmen Tianzong were still resting in their residences. At most, during the time that Xiao Yan was in contact with the heavenly calamity stone, Gu Lianqing invited Tang Jun and the others to compete at this place. In less than half a day, Gu Lianqing was able to refine such a good pill. Gu Lianqing's talent in alchemy was evident. That was because he wasn't fooling around. Normally, the qi reversal pill wouldn't produce a lotus when it came out of the furnace. That was the result of Gu Lianqing infusing his own Dao art essence into the pill. The quality of this batch of qi reversal pills was a level higher than ordinary qi reversal pills. Tan Yinqing, who was standing beside Tang Jun, looked at this scene and softly said, "Less than 2 hours, only a little more than 3/4 of an hour. This speed is too fast, but the quality of the pill seems to be very good. Tang Jun, are you confident?" Tang Jun didn't say anything and just stared at the dark blue square cauldron in a daze. "Don't worry, Tang Jun will be fine," Yan Wuwei said from the side. Fatty has been learning under Xiao Yan's tutelage for many years. The fire attribute Dao technique he cultivates on the side is the Nanmingli Fire's Nanming proper technique. Even though his cultivation is still at Aurus core stage, he also has very high attainments in pill refining. Yan Wuwei casually said, "I'm not confident. At the very least, I have to wait until I reach the nascent soul realm. However, Tang Jun will definitely be fine." After hearing this, the juniors of the ancient king's bloodline stared at him. Some of the younger children even made faces at him. Yan Wuwei wasn't annoyed and also made a face at the other party, which made the child stomp his feet in anger. An ancient clan's descendant beside Gu Lianqing muttered, "What's the use of just boasting? It depends on your actions." Before Brother Lianqing refined the pill, he asked you to familiarize yourself with the clear flow cauldron. Don't tell me you want to familiarize yourself with it again? Brother Lianqing has never used the clear flow cauldron to refine pills before. For the sake of fairness, Gu Lianqing and Tang Jun agreed to use the same cauldron, the same batch of ingredients, and the same recipe that everyone had come into contact with before. The winner would be determined by the quality, quantity, and speed of the pills. First, they would compare quality, then quantity, and finally time. Generally speaking, under the premise of ensuring the quality, the number of pills refined would not affect the speed of the pill. The number of pills refined was mainly determined by the moment of pulling the pill out of the cauldron. The more skillful one was, the less wasted materials and the more pills. As for the ancient clan's descendants muttering, Tang Jun turned a deaf ear to it. He only stared at the small, square-shaped clear flow cauldron in a daze. Yi Xinhui stood beside his master, Yang Tai, and secretly transmitted his voice to ask, "Master, Martial Uncle Tang should not have cultivated the Nanmingli fire before, right? Will he be at a disadvantage?" Yang Tai said calmly, "It's true that junior brother Tang hasn't cultivated the Nanming orthodox technique, and hasn't grasped the Nanmingli fire. However, I'm sure that if your martial Uncle Tang was guilty, he wouldn't be like this." Yi Xinhui quietly said, "But as far as I know, among your generation, the person with the best alchemy skills should be Martial Aunt Lin?" The person he was referring to was naturally little Lin Tong. Don't be fooled by her Lolita appearance, but her alchemy skills could be considered the best among the second-generation direct disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. That is because your Martial Aunt Lin cultivated the Nanmingli fire and mastered the Nanmingli fire. Yang Tai faintly smiled. Purely based on alchemy skills, she might not be better than your Martial Uncle Tang. Your Martial Uncle Tang's combat ability is one of the strongest among our peers, but perhaps because of his interest, he has spent a lot of energy on the art of alchemy, said the Martial Uncle Tang with a smile. While Yang Tai and Yi Xinhui were conversing, Tang Jun still did not make a move. He was only staring at the clear flowing cauldron in a daze. More and more ancient clan disciples frowned. Can he even see a cauldron of pills just by looking? He should really count this time into the alchemy time. Someone muttered in a low voice. Gu Lianqing raised his hand to stop him and shook his head, indicating for him to stop talking. However, this voice naturally fell into everyone's ears. Duan Muhang, who was standing beside Tang Jun, glanced at Gu Lianqing and said, "Junior was impetuous. I hope Senior can forgive me. However, when you were refining the qi revolving pill, the last pull of the pill was a bit improper. If you had changed the magic power from 6 void and 4 real to 7 void and 3 real, the effect would have been better and would have been able to obtain 13 pills." The entire second floor of the Black Spirit Temple suddenly became quiet. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.